You're listening to WZYE 95.9 FM. You are listening to WZYE 95.9 FM, the most influential name in Caribbean radio in the tri-state area. Broadcasting from East Orange, New Jersey, the most influential name in Caribbean radio, WZYE 95.9 FM.
Happy. Relentless search for luxury, in search of peace and happiness, the human mind wouldn't rest. A constant nag within we soul, demanding respect from the world. We get the urge in different form, but luxury is the norm. Money is very essential, but can't buy peace of mind at all. We still like dogs without a bone, if we have the money alone. Because appreciation plays on the human mind. Everyone needs some for happiness all the time. Because importance, if we are drive to live, everyone's on the hunt. Every man ought to give generously. The feeling has no barrier. Race and class doesn't matter. Once you are alive, you in the game. You do anything to get a good name. Some wealthy men turn to suicide. Can't find food to feed their pride. The aged and crippled in the ring, fight to be like a king. Children become delinquent for lack of love from their parents. That's why appreciation is most important to man. On the human mind, everyone needs some for happiness all the time. Because important, if we are trying to live, everyone's on the hunt. Every man ought to give generously. Solution to bad industrial relations. Employees will gladly draw their pay and do the job half the way. When workman feeling unwanted, the working spirit is daunted. He comes on the job and fool around. Production going down. Just make him feel significant. You get him do anything you want. A pat on the back is the best move for relations to improve. Because appreciation is on the human mind. Everyone needs some for happiness all the time. Because important, if we are drive to live, everyone's on the hunt, every man ought to give generously. Our deepest craving is common. All we need is attention to put us in the happy zone, regardless of what we own. Life is lonely without it. Each one should give a little bit. What you want your neighbors do, then life on earth will be true. Take a tip from the scripture. Appreciate one another. Share your love and make the mold for total peace in the world. On the human mind, everyone needs some for happiness all the time. Because important, if we are trying to live, everyone's on the hunt, every man ought to give generously.
This thing called TNM, this thing called UNC, is one set of dotishness to Mama Kai, you and me. It ain't have no color, it ain't have no race, it ain't have no principles or any values in place. And it was never meant to be the answer for unity. It shares no philosophy with any consistency. For when you watch the pedigree in each and every party, the difference you see turns out to be a case of power and money. Look here, them French Creoles in Saint-As, Maraval and Saint-Clair, they don't hold no allegiance or no party here. Rich men must be supporting who they feel going to win. Loyalty, friends, means nothing. Money is their thing. That's why PNM quite on turned coat to UNC. And when Del Motley, his background showed he was with DAC. Hector Macklin, the speaker, swore PNM till he dead. And when the last election over, he was UNC instead. Augustus Ramreka sing. I knew him in Tapia. Next thing I know, he was a PNM minister. John Humphrey changed from Trinity and he joined about 5 parties. So he's only die-hard you and grassroots me. It's PNM and UNC. I lie. Oh, die, die, die. Oh, yeah, lie. This thing called PNM, this thing called UNC, is only a power play to get our sympathy. It's not about African, it's neither East Indian. It have nothing to do with anybody's religion. Kamaluddin is a Muslim, Mahathir a Christian to the brim. Yet Montano the mulatto, different race, same party, you know. Johnny Milton and Rex Awan are 2 Chinese politicians. And while both of them love PNM, Brian Whiteton had a problem. Them French Creoles in St. Anne's, Marabal and St. Clair, tell them they don't know allegiance or no party here. Right through Richmond does be supporting who they feel going to win. Loyalty, friends, means nothing. Money is their thing. The name Steve Ferguson, Israeli and East Indian, who with Ishak Galbaran sing, both parties they financing. Joey Saw and Eddie Elias, a PNM Lebanese, and yet Sabta of the same cast helps UNC pay their fees. Syrian businessman John Rahel, PNM make him mayor. An African Wade Mark as well, UNC made him minister. PNM's fundraising dinner had businessmen of all color. So it's only Chupidi, you and me. It's PNM and UNC. I like. This thing called PNM, this thing called UNC, it foolishly splitting we on the grounds of ethnicity. It make friends mash up fast, race hatred it unmask. It cause ignorant people to bring out their gun and cutlass. And while poor people arguing about who good and who should win, the leaders jumping like monkey from one party to party. Just look at Arthur Sanderson, Horace Brooms is the next one. And first they could skip, they deserve a pick for hop, step and jump next Olympics. Look here. 10 French Creoles in St. Anne's, Marabal and St. Clair, tell them they don't know allegiance for no party here. Richmond has been supporting who they feel going to win. That's right. Loyalty, friends, means nothing. Money is their thing. I'll see back and let UNC to open she own party. Kamala says and now previously she run wrong to UNC. Abu Bakr supported all 3 and now he fund nobody. Errol McLeod walking wrong daily, so you can't say which side he be. A&R, my good friend, walked out on Eric Williams years ago, and yet last year he would say how he loved Eric for so. Raj Maharaj and Manning get get away. And Ralph was UNC next day. And yet notice you cussing stupid me for
PNM and UNC.
God bless. Yela, Alice Liverpool, Shockers. Hey Chucky, Yela, Mama Bodoya. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for getting the message. This thing called PNM, this thing called UNC, it don't mean one blessed thing to Britain, France, and Germany. It don't hold no water for Clinton and John Major. Them don't care who in power once they collect their Canada. When Clinton buy oil and sugar, no party doesn't matter. Them greenbacks that Clinton send we, Mark and Jack or UNC. That's why Deborah Mickens lately for the Tobago Assembly. I say hats off to she for thinking like me when you see it independently. Them French Creoles, Vincent, that's Marabal and St. Clair. Tell them
they don't know allegiance or no party here.
Rich men just be supporting who they feel going to win. Loyalty, friends means nothing, money is nothing. Abubakar left PNM, open his own party. Moving as some run from A&R to now, then he run back by UNC. Morgan Job joined now recently, cause he said that he loved Robbie. But while he in now bodily, he mind still up in UNC. Party in TNT, money is their ideology. That's why Brian White don't tell me he ain't taking over our poverty. Ramesh Maharaj cussing Manning, but do you know he was PNM years ago? So would somebody show me the morality in PNM and UNC? Alive. God bless.
You get up one morning, your elders have something, you don't know how they get it, but you want to use it. But if you ask them old people to get the things what they went through, ask them this any day, and your parents sure to say, black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. Make up your mind, brother, that you're able to get a pulley and jam with the devil. Why? Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. Make up your mind, brother, that you're ready to swim offshore and hold your boat steady. Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. So when you're here, you get a little something. With that dragon eye, you keep watching, because I don't tell you already. Black man do get nothing easy. You get up one morning, and oil money running. How it come you don't know, so that it care how the thing go. But if they read about Uriah, they wanna find out the pressure. How we get so much old hell to get a penny from TLL. Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. You got to take up your own cash money, pay people for your own refinery. Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. Make up your mind to be a magician, to make money out of scrap iron. Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. So when you hear you get a little something, with that eagle eye you keep watching, because I don't tell you already, black man don't get nothing easy. Say we got up one morning, independence happening, getting the thing come easy. Now they're taking liberty, but if they know about petition, we are to send to England for some woman to tell we in this colony free. Black man have to keep on jabbing, for black man to get a little something. You got to go to conference in England to get independence in your own land. Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. People hold you, humiliate you, turn on and sell you, and then they free you. Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. So when you hear you get a little something, with that dragon eye you keep watching, because I don't tell you already, black man don't get nothing easy. So when a black man gets something, he got to start thinking to get it there easy. He got to practice economy, from getting licks from the slave master to become the land owner. Brother, it's a terrible journey, packed with plenty brutality. Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. You got to rise up, you got to stand up, pick up your mind, you will always stay on top. Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. You got to go to conference in England to get independence in your own land. Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. You got to take up your own cash money, pay people for your own refinery. Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little something. Make up your mind to be a magician, to make money out of scrap iron. Black man have to keep on jamming, for black man to get a little.
Keep me as the apple of thine eye, hide me under the shadow of thy wing, O Lord, my Savior. It's so hard to deal with personal struggle, so sad when you feel alone in your trouble. It's real hard when you want to talk to a brother. It's so bad because of how some look at you after. So Jesus, cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. Cover my head. Satan want me dead. Cover my back from human attack. So Jesus, cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. People see you smile, but don't know the hurt that you're feeling. Even as God's child, at times your heart does be bleeding. Where can you go when you're really looking for healing? Who know how to flow when your soul needs some restoring? So Jesus, cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. Cover me home from evils unknown. Cover my feet so I'll never retreat. Oh Lord, cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. Cover my brother, cover my sister, them who under pressure. Cover the preacher, every church worker, the young believer. Cover the worship leader and intercessor, every gospel minister. Cover. Jesus alone is the one who has the real answer. The one on the throne is the true and loving Father. He will hold your hand and keep you from going under. He will make you stand and let you know he's a fixer. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it, Jesus. Cover me while you fix it, Jesus. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it, Jesus. Cover me while you fix it, Jesus. Cover me mind. You know the struggle sometimes. Cover me mouth, that the wrong thing wouldn't come out. Oh Lord, cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it, Jesus. Cover me. Cover the Christian in the midst of aggression with the power of your right hand. Jesus, cover them helpless children. Jesus, defend them. Send help from heaven. Jesus, cover all them radio stations that blessing the nation. Grant divine protection. Jesus, cover me.
Truer words were never spoken. The less you associate with some people, the more your life will improve. Anytime you tolerate mediocrity in others, it increases your mediocrity. An important attribute in successful people is their impatience with negative thinking and negative acting people. As you grow, your associates will change. Some of your friends will not want you to go on. They will want you to stay where they are. Friends that don't help you climb will want you to crawl. Your friends will stretch your vision or choke your dream. Those that don't increase you will eventually decrease you. Consider this. Never receive counsel from unproductive people. Never discuss your problems with someone incapable of contributing to the solution, because those who never succeed themselves are always first to tell you how. Not everyone has a right to speak into your life. You are certain to get the worst of the bargain when you exchange ideas with the wrong person. Don't follow anyone who's not going anywhere. With some people you spend an evening. With others, you invest it. Be careful where you stop to inquire for directions along the road of life. Wise is the person who fortifies his life with the right friendships. If you run with wolves, you will learn how to howl. But if you associate with eagles, you will learn how to soar to great heights. A mirror reflects a man's face, but what he is really like is shown by the kind of friends he chooses. The simple but true fact of life is that you become like those with whom you closely associate, for the good and the bad. Note, be not mistaken. This is applicable to family as well as friends. Yes, do love, appreciate, and be thankful for your family, for they will always be your family, no matter what. Just know that they are human first, and though they are family to you, they may be a friend to someone else and will fit somewhere in the criteria above. In prosperity, our friends know us. In adversity, we know our friends. Never make someone a priority when you are only an option for them. If you are going to achieve excellence in big things, you develop the habit in little matters. Excellence is not an exception. It is a prevailing attitude.
Mr. A special hello to all the WZYE 95.9 FM listeners. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, It's in the village with the DAT Triplets at WZYE 95.9 FM. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, we come to you every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. That's Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, as we always say, it doesn't matter what color t-shirt you wear a mauve t-shirt, you wear a purple t-shirt, you wear a burgundy t-shirt, you wear a light blue t-shirt, each and every one is welcome in the village with the DAT Triplets at WZYE 95.9 FM. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, in addition, it doesn't matter what planet you're from Mazatanians, Venuranians, Xenoranians, Sonoranians, Japanoranians, each and every one is welcome in the village with the DAT Triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. Let me say a special welcome to no other than the Commissioner of Newark. That is the one and only Thomas the Paloseconian, originally from Salibia, or you could say Salibe. That's no other than Thomas E., the Commissioner in Newark, Marshall Nisbet. Tommy, welcome.
Yes, good evening, and it's a pleasure being here. I love the introduction. You seem to be getting it better every time.
Tommy, all I try to do is to improve on a daily basis.
All right, sir. You're working out.
I'm a whip, a work in progress.
I like that one. One. I had to borrow that sometime.
Yeah. I'm a whip, a work in progress, man. Yeah.
Yes,
WIP, a work in progress. Yeah, of course. And let me say a special hello to the other third of the DAT Triplets. That's Diana, Ansel, and Tommy. It's no other than Waveney, McDonald, Benskin, Diana, the Storm, the poet, the motivational speaker, Greta, from a place with a country or an island that starts with B, no other than Diana, Stormy, the Storm, Benskin, Waveney, McDonald, boy.
I'm from a country that starts with what?
A B.
Oh, I'm glad to know. I'm glad you know that. B. I'm glad you know that.
Belize?
Well,
Belize?
I'm glad you know that.
Tell me she takes it up, eh? She takes it
Right.
up. Belize.
I'm glad you know I'm from a country that starts with B, and I'm born in one that starts with T. I'm from a city that starts with T.
Wait.
Grew up in a city that starts with Saint.
Wait. Can we clarify something before we go down this road again?
You're soft. Why are you sounding so soft? People here listening to you and you're sounding low like you're all the way in China talking.
No,
What kind of cheap equipment you buy one and get one free and it ain't working properly?
I'm on a headpiece.
Well, it ain't working properly for me. You sound like you all the way in China, but go ahead.
I think what you have to do, you have to stop importing them B mobile phones.
No, I don't want to be mobile phone. I got my phone from Comcast. And I paid $1,000 for it. I buy no
American
$1,000 American dollars. Yeah.
You could buy a Galaxy by a T-Mobile. Yeah?
I ain't buying no T-Mobile phone. No.
We have TT and A.
Who, me? No, I have Xfinity.
Oh, I see. That's part of the problem.
What?
That's part of the problem.
What's part of the problem?
Xfinity.
Xfinity, Comcast.
What them does do?
Cable, everything.
Oh, okay. All right. What kind of phone is that? A Samsung?
A Samsung? I don't even know. Well, it's here. It's brand new. Though. Paid a lot of money for it. I don't want an iPhone. I find them to be too miserable.
iPhone is the best.
I'm too miserable for me. I don't know.
Who's your AI person?
No?
Who's your AI person? I just ask Siri. Who does ask?
CBC?
I just ask Siri. Who does that?
I have Alexa, everybody. No matter who I call.
Okay.
They start stalking.
All right. So you want to go down to
because they're all listening.
Yeah, they're all listening.
When you want to go down to that street, who you just ask for the address?
What street? What street you talking about, answer?
Oh, what's the name of that street again, Tony?
What street you talking about?
In
I think
Barbados?
I'm having some peppermint and ginger tea. It rained all day. It's still raining.
Huh?
Huh?
she could ask ways for direction.
Yeah, way is real good, though. And in New
Yeah,
York,
but what is the street he talking about? I don't know. There are many streets there you can go to.
in Barbados,
Plenty, yeah.
what is that street down by the? Used to be down by the library again. What's that street called?
That's White Park Road.
Knox Street. No, in Trinidad, I'm talking about.
I don't know. You have to ask one of them in the chat.
That street will just go down.
Huh?
The street that starts with an N.
You know his name. I know you hear me horn.
Is it Nelly Street?
You frequented that street a lot.
That's the one with have Lord for
Oh, that's the Calypsonian.
oh, okay.
Or Gabi?
But
The name of street after Gabi?
No, you know what? Barbados did. They were moving the statue, the same statue that you don't want to call the name.
Or Nelson?
He was right in the middle of Trafalgar Square.
Okay.
And when they moved the statue, I think they were gonna turn it to face the other direction, something like that. They found a coin dating back to the early century. England sent and said they want it.
And they sent it for them?
Yeah, but you have to, according to their,
No,
I thought they would have left it in the custody of the Barbados government as a form of, reparations.
When that happened?
It was a couple of years ago. I got to research it on there now on the internet and tell you.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, before the pandemic.
I think finders should have been keepers and losers should have been weepers.
Yeah.
That is right.
I remember I followed and they were asking what should you put, and then I think they eventually moved him. I think so, but I know they turned him and they were asking what should you put in the place of him. I said put a bulletin board. I was part of the chat. Put a bulletin board there, some kind of board, representing Barbados, and put high achievers for the month of, the school children, workers, put their name on there for the month. That's what they need to do.
So what it is, an ancient coin dating back to the 1st century AD was discovered in Barbados in 2019.
Ansel, I'm going to research it. Ansel, think I'm telling them lies,
No, because I don't know what it is.
Oh, okay.
I'm hearing it for the first time, so I want to know what it is. The coin which is made of bronze bears the image of Roman Emperor Vespasian. It is the first ancient coin to be found in Barbados, and it's a significant find for the island's history. The coin was found by metal detectorist named John Cumberbatch while he was searching for coins near the village of Bathsheba.
That's not that one. No, I'm talking about when they turned Nelson statue. But I never hear about this one. But tell me though. Let me go and find turning Nelson statue in Barbados.
Okay. All right. So that's a different one.
That's new to me. Mm-hmm.
There's all kind of thing happening in Barbados, right?
Yeah. They found this coin. What coin was found in Trafalgar Square?
Oh God, we learning all kind of information in the village, but find a coin.
I don't have any Bajans listening. Want to call it and elaborate?
Here it is. The statue of Horatio Nelson in Trafalgar Square, London, was turned to face the south on June 24, 2020. This was done as a symbolic gesture of solidarity with Black Lives Matter movement, which was protesting against racism and police brutality. They didn't tell us about the coin though. They didn't tell us about the coin. So, hold up. Maybe we could, let me see something.
Yeah, I'm going to have to Google it.
Is that Trafalgar Square in Barbados?
Yeah, there's a Trafalgar Square in Barbados.
But this one is in London.
No. Trafalgar
Oh,
coin found at Trafalgar's coin found in under statue, under Nelson statue or something like that. Coin. Any Bajans listening? I want to call in and help me out here. Coin found
yeah, but
under Nelson statue.
Wanna help your Barbadian sister?
Hmm?
well, the statue of Lord is the same person. Lord of Nelson in Bridgetown, Barbados, was
Hmm?
on a pedestal on November 16, 2020. The statue had been erected in 1813 to commemorate Nelson's victory at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. The decision to remove the statue was made by the Barbados government in wake of Black Lives Matter protests that have been taking place around the world in the summer of 2020. The government said that the statue was a symbol of colonialism and slavery, and that it was no longer appropriate to have it on display in Barbados, which has become a republic in 2021. And the interview was found.
All right, I'm finding it. I'm finding it.
Let's see this.
I know it was a big controversy. Bronze statue sculpted. But you go ahead with your people in the chat. I'm gonna find it here. So many things in it here.
Yeah, I mean, this is
Barbados, and Nelson, Sterling,
Hey, you sure about that, Diana?
I'm researching it here. I'm gonna call a Bajan friend of mine who would know.
Yeah, call
For
her.
sure.
Okay.
Call a real Bajan.
Did I call a real Bajan? Hold it till.
Oh God!
Tommy full of jokes, eh? Mm-hmm. Tommy full of jokes.
Yeah, I know. All right. So let's go back. Let's go into the chat. And of course, the first one inside tonight was no other than Nadia.
Nadia.
Nadia says good night, everyone. Yeah.
Good night, Nadia.
Good night, Anselm. I guess some blue hearts tonight, but
Mm-hmm.
let me get some red ones.
I'm taking that, Nadia. It's all good.
To me, Nadia rationing the hearts, but
It's okay. With red hearts, you could give me one. It's all right.
all right, okay, all right, no problem. Diana Benskin, good night. Diana get some kind of something wrong with Nadia phone. Nadia daughter also says good night, everyone. That is
Good
Nadia.
night, Visha. Good night, my dear.
That is Nadia part 1 or part. All right.
Nadia squared.
Visha says good night, sir. Anselm. Yeah, Tommy, you get some purple ones this time, boy.
Good night, and thanks for the purple hearts.
I wonder if Captain Guy ever got purple hat. I heard say Captain got pink hat, you know. He's the only one who's in here. Me got pink hat.
Oh gosh.
Captain was the only one in the army that got pink hat.
But you have breasts?
I don't know.
No.
I don't know. I know people that get purple hat. A yellow birdie tell me that Captain got a pink hat.
Captain, you don't take that, Captain. Fire back.
Daria says good night, Hailey, Ellis, Troy, Ulrich, Rennie, Vonnie, Ken. Hey, what the Ulrich and Hailey? No Hailey, Ellis. Yeah?
Ellis must be hustling his dollar, you know. Ellis got a hustling dollar.
Yeah, Takesha was second.
And I think Horace said current does go up in their area regularly.
Takesha was third.
Huh?
Nadia was first. Visha was second.
Oh, my bad. Thank you. Yeah. I mix it.
Did it rain the whole day by you guys?
Yeah, rain whole day.
Most.
The whole day. I mean, woo.
Takesha says good day. Anselm, God, I get plenty emojis there, boy. Heart, boy. God. Only love in the village, boy. Heart for soul.
That's it.
You know who birthday is today?
Yeah. You love a boy.
Diana friend. Oh
And
God.
Diana going to celebrate with them or what?
Yeah, virtually. They're celebrating it virtually.
Only good for that.
Yeah. So a blueberry tell me Diana having a virtual party when the show finish.
Yeah, that bluebirdie need his beak cut off.
Oh God. Diana, oh God, Diana, sorry, I apologize for letting the cat out of the bag. I wasn't supposed to say nothing, but yeah, the love doctor sent me a message. Takesha says Nadia, Carice, Lana, Judy, Rose, Miss Coover, Erica, John. Yeah, plenty hard.
Trying.
Good. Albert, Rennie, Hailey, Capiza, Ellis, Choi, Bonnie, Rajvi, Ken. You know who I see in a while too? Choice.
Erica.
I see Choice Smith. Yeah, only love in the village. No room for hate or negativity. And here's the doctor. Here's Dr. Love. Good evening, boys and girls. Love in the house. Great love is all I bring. Let me see what kind of poem he had tonight, boy.
Oh Lord.
Let me see what he gave us lyrical tonight.
Yeah, roses are red and violets are blue. We don't have no money, and what we gonna do? We ain't want no $200 to go on no date. $200.
Was just to open the gate, right?
Yeah, I fill the dinner plate. Huh?
$200 only opens the gate.
$200 don't even know open my gate. $200 don't even get you up the track.
When he said, Dr. Love says, sending out sensational, phenomenal, emotional, loyal love to all the ladies. And you have a special one here, sending out, he says sending out, speciational, fantasional, lovational, loyal love to Miss D. Oh God. Oh God. That the man sending a special thing on his birthday, you know. And today is his birthday, you know. Happy birthday, anyway.
We live to see many more, Rennie.
Yeah, today.
Happy Earth Day.
I think he said today is his 40th birthday.
He's a baby.
He 40th?
Yeah, I think that's what he said.
He 48th. Are you trying to make him younger? He's an old boy.
Go down, give him a little thing now.
Yo, give him his right age. 48. Yo, that's how old he is.
All right. Everyone has a duty and purpose, and everyone has to be mighty and victorious. Appointed unto me in more than one way, sharing love for 48 years to this day. Hey, Rennie, you know who's also born on this day? Malcolm X, eh?
The 19th?
Yeah, May 19th.
If it's
The 20th.
Malcolm's birthday, yeah.
Is it 20th?
Today's the 20th.
Or it was the 9th. Malcolm was on the 19th.
Mm-hmm.
Rennie says, I'm thankful for life, my family, my friends. I'm thankful for friends and family on WZYE. That's how we just do it, you know. It's family, you know. One love all the way. Bonnie Roberts, good night all to all locked on. Trust you all have a good day. Yeah. We had a good day today, man. Rain all day today in the US, but you get first time, but I'm glad for the rain. The lawn get wet like crazy, but hi Nadia, Joan, Tequila, Miss Coover, not forgetting the storms, blessing. Yeah. Bonnie said, I will be in and out of the program. Got some guests at my home. Trying to be polite. Laughed out loud. Yeah. Bonnie, let them listen to the program, man. Yeah. Nadia, good night to you. Hey. Well, look at this.
Mean Gene
coming, boy. Good evening. Yeah, watch. He say good evening, Tommy. On Wall Street, you know. He said good evening to the storm, boy.
He said good evening to who?
The storm.
Look at on the screen. You gain all kind of special good evening from fellas in the oh God. Diana, listener. When you have it, you have it. You know, man? When he started from day one, now it's Eugene.
When you have no stress, you're good. That's what you need to say.
No.
I don't want no stress. I good.
Yeah, let's say happy birthday to Dr. Love, please.
Yes, indeed, Dr. Love.
Yeah. Judy says Barbados should have sent statue and coin back to England. They're out of order. It's on the island of Barbados. It rightfully belongs to the island. I wasn't sending back no.
Yeah. I'm trying to find the art. I'm trying to find the article. I'm still digging.
I wasn't sending back no coin. To be
Me
honest.
neither.
They probably would get punished. Had probably go sit in a corner.
What? What are you gonna do? Come and take it?
What big mama England would have done.
What are you gonna do? What they could I do? Judy said, best evening to the host, Ansem, Diana, and Tommy. Pleasant good evening. Same to you, Judy.
Same to you, Judy.
Yeah. Judy's another one of the lawyers. Good night, all villagers. Blessed evening to all. Thank the universe force for another blessed day in the land of the living. Yeah. Judy says, I'm listening from a distance. So if I don't respond, no disrespect intended. Nah, man. We understand. Wait now. But you know why I see yet? Eiley. From them. Yeah.
Highly vexed with you. You know, you this pep on the last show.
Good night to all the listeners who don't come in the chat.
Yeah. Judy said, I don't speak love, I give and show love. Love is action.
He may come in later.
Look, we partner, Captain. Cap, I hear somebody say they give you a pink heart. You is the first person in the military to get a pink heart. I know it, so don't get upset with me.
There's World Bee Day. Buy a bottle of honey. Okay.
What do you mean by World Bee Day? But yet have plenty bees in Trinidad, boy.
Oh yeah, down south.
Yeah.
Or is it Maruga, Miranda? The bees stinging, boy.
Yeah. I feel
but those are wild bees though, because you know the other bees, for lack of a better word, the domesticated bees don't attack you like that.
I wonder if it's Capizo like them bees.
They're probably wild bees.
No, I'm serious. You know, Capizo doesn't mind bees.
And you can hear, yeah, I know. And you can hear them. My mother's husband used to mind them.
Yeah.
And you'd have to put on all this outfit and the smoker and go smoke them when you want to harvest the honey. You know, time I get stung by one, huh?
Yeah,
but you know he sting me, huh?
Dan and Tommy, I feel them was UNC bees, and I feel they went to that.
You see?
As long as it's not killer bees.
No, but I feel them was UNC bees. Go and see a picture of one of them. It's yellow in it.
Okay.
So I wonder if was it a PNM constituency they went? Them bees and them?
Oh.
You never know.
Yeah. We had to track them bees and them, yes? Yeah. We had to put GPS and them bees to see where they come from.
But you when you pass near them, you could hear them. They have a loud hum to them.
Trinidad Margot, welcome. Good night to you as well. Eiley inside, boy. What tax?
Hailey? Welcome.
Yeah. Nadia said, Rennie Mohammed, Dr. Love Mohammed, happy birthday. Wishing you many more birthdays. God bless and keep you safe. Yeah, boy. Dr. Love, you know. Dr. Love Mohammed, boy. You know that? Mean Jean said they not no rain in what years?
They had no rain by him?
Yeah.
And they said they had a mild earthquake the other day. You all felt it?
I didn't feel it, but I saw it on the news.
Yeah, up in New York, New Jersey, yeah.
Manhattan and northern New Jersey.
And the weatherman was explaining that it is of some concern to him because it did not occur on the fault.
Okay.
So, of course, with whatever knowledge he has, it was of concern to him that, you know, a bigger one coming behind.
You know,
I don't know. Huh?
These environments are not designed for earthquake.
Huh. And I read something where they say Manhattan is sinking by how much meters per year because of all them big buildings that are mountain there.
Is it that Manhattan sinking or the water levels are rising?
Yeah, I know.
If the water levels rise, then it will be sinking. But it ain't literally sinking. That's my thought. Maybe I'm wrong, but
So if water levels rising, that mean that it's sinking, huh?
Well, I guess same difference, eh?
Well, it says, looking at it, the Guardian a day ago, I saw it said New York City is sinking due to the weight of its skyscrapers. What is this thing here now? Why are you blocking me from reading? Due to the weight of its skyscrapers. Blah, blah, blah. Vertiginous buildings worsening the flooding threat posed to the metropolis from the rising seas. And they've now research has found the Big Apple may be the city that never sleeps, but is a city that certainly sinks, subsiding by approximately 1 to 2 millimeters each year on average.
Yeah, that's correct.
Millimeters is a small thing, though.
Well, that's a small thing. Okay.
They say the sinking of Manhattan is a serious problem as it could lead to flooding and other problems.
But they said that the water that flanks New York City has risen by 9 inches since 1950, and major flooding events from storms could be up to 4 times more frequent by the end of the century. A deeply concentrated population of 8.4 million people face varying degrees of hazard from inundation in New York City.
Rennie Bless birthday big chat. Judy says, Tommy, do agree with you. They'll find a way to punish those non-Caucasian nations. And Judy says, the African bees have a red spot, and the sting is the hardest ever. Oh, them UNC bees don't sting. I mean, them other kind of bees, they don't sting. Them bees were Capiza mining. Them don't sting.
So you think Capiza cross one with didn't they, weren't they warning us about an invasion of the African bees though?
You know, I think at some time that was in the public space.
That was the African snail, no?
No. They had some of the warning you about the African bee threat to those places, to the Caribbean. You see where Africa is located geographically, right?
So don't forget, coming up at 8:15, we have Economist Dr. Arjoon, who will be joining us. And I think we're going to have an interesting discussion. You know, we're going to be talking about, the economy in Trinidad and Tobago, the difference between what the IMF and the Minister of Finance sees, as the Trinidad and Tobago economy improving, and what Mrs. Kamala Prasad sees. As a matter of fact, from her perspective, things going downhill. We're also going to find out a little more about the dragon field. What is the status of the dragon field? We're going to delve into, what is nominal and real GDP, so we could get an idea of things that happen in Trinidad and Tobago. So those are some of the things that we're going to delve in, when Dr. Arjoon joins us here in the Village DAT Triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. So stick and stay. We're going to go for a short break. We'll be right back after this message. Don't go nowhere.
You're listening to WZYE 95.9 FM. You are listening to WZYE 95.9 FM, the most influential name in Caribbean radio in the tri-state area. Broadcasting from East Orange, New Jersey, the most influential name in Caribbean radio, WZYE 95.9 FM.
Always harassing me to go into politics by joining a big party. But I told her no, sorry, I never went QRC, and I don't like it, so politics is not for me. I don't know how to lie, and I can't mama guy. I can't make big time speech and then contradict what I preach. I don't like corruption, or to cause frustration. I can't live by exploiting the smaller man. I am not a socialist, I am not a communist, I don't own a big business, I am no capitalist, I have too much dignity, indulging hysterics, that is why I'm afraid, afraid, tell them I'm afraid, I'm really afraid, politics, oh yeah, tell me what I'm afraid. For me, I cannot make that life is too hard to take. My heart is simply too soft, and I cannot be a fake. You need someone big and bad. You need someone mean and hard. You need someone rough for politics in Trinidad. I don't know how to grab, how to give people shove, how to juggle the facts, how to kill poor people with tax. I can't watch the unfed, destitutes without bed, and pretend I have greater problems ahead. I am not an atheist, I am not an anarchist, I am not a royalist, I am no colonialist. I have too much common sense to wallow in rhetorics. That is why I'm afraid, 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 I'm really afraid. Politics. Ah, yeah. All right. I cannot stand up and quote everything that Karl Marx wrote, or make empty promises to capture the common vote. I cannot breed violence and view it with indifference to cool the masses and insult their intelligence. I don't know how to wheel or go back on a deal. I don't know how to shape senseless bureaucratic red tape. I cannot agitate, I cannot dominate. I'm too straight to dictate scams like Watergate. I am not an extremist, I am not an egotist, I am not a pragmatist, I am not an idealist. I have too much self-respect to run with the fanatics. That is why I'm afraid. Tell them I'm afraid. I say afraid. I'm really afraid. Politics. Ah, yeah. Give it. Dem, 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 dem. I am not a socialist, I am not a communist, I don't own a big business, I am no capitalist, I have too much dignity to indulge in hysterics. That is why I'm afraid, 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 I'm really afraid. Politics.
If you collect.
I think there are two ways in which people are controlled. First of all, frighten people, and secondly, demoralize them. An educated, healthy, and confident nation is harder to govern. And I think there's an element in the thinking of some people. We don't want people to be educated, healthy, and confident because they would get out of control. The top 1% of the world's population own 80% of the world's wealth. It's incredible that people put up with it, but they're poor, they're demoralized, they're frightened, and therefore they think perhaps the safest thing to do is take orders and hope for the best.
Yes. I need to know what.
Can't take that. When they want to stop all this humiliation, I can't take that. Wake up in the morning, more frustration, I can't take that. No, ain't taking that. So ain't taking that. Ain't taking that. So ain't taking that.
We are back with you. It's in the village with the DAT Triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. We come to every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. That's Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. So we are, Dr. Arjoon is going to join us about 8:15, tonight. And, I saw a video with, I call them the pastors from the Underground Report, delivering a manila envelope to the Commissioner of Police. And I was saddened to see how the Commissioner of Police status have been lowered, and then they wanted to pray with the Commissioner of Police. I don't understand how you could lower yourself to such status, and allow these guys, these gentlemen, to use you like that.
What happened? They delivered a mail. What happened?
Yeah, all right, let me get the video. Yeah, let me get the video. They delivered a let me see. I gotta get that video. They delivered let me see where it is here. I think this is it here. Let me see here. 1 minute. So I think okay, here it is.
No consult.
All right, this is it. Yes, they delivered something to the Commissioner of Police, and she came out and she accepted the package from them, and then they pray with her. So I wanted to know, pastors,
is there no protocol to deliver packages to persons like her?
I don't know.
That's kind of risky.
I mean, when I saw it, I asked myself, what are we coming to? Let me get it right here. What are we coming to?
As far as I could have seen, is a horse and pony show.
Tommy, thank you so much.
Is that what?
A horse and pony show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because really, when you really think about it, what's that about? If you want to get a message or a letter to the Commissioner of Police, the whole thing was just like I said, it's a show, a big show.
But Tommy, why she allowed herself to be snagged in that?
You know what? Some things are beyond you and I.
All right, let's proceed with the video.
Come in peace. No consult. Come in peace. What is? Executing our constitutional rights. Come in peace. You never come move to the police. Carry information to the
And Andy and myself will be allowed to go in. They ask no blocking of the roads, peaceful, and we will go in and take care of the people's business.
Just like I did.
So just let me know what's the nature of the gathering here today, and what you all want to address by the gathering.
This is the pushback and the Stakeholders United movement. We are gathering. We came from the Express House. We are now heading to the office of the Commissioner of Police. And our concern, as I gave to you and other members of the media, which is of course dealing with the Foster Cummings issue. We have also written to the Freedom of Information Act, or at least preparing to ask questions as whether or not Mr. Cummings and Mr. Jerome Chambers ever worked at the Commissioner of Cooperative office, and if so, why were they dismissed? So a lot of things we are here for, and we're not going to be sidetracked. I want to make it clear that this is the core issues. As far as we're concerned, the Pope could anoint Dr. Rowley. We still have business to take care of, and we need to deal with that business each and every Thursday we're out here. I can tell you now and put you on notice, it's going to be a long, hot summer.
Just remind me the name of the organization.
Pushback Movement and the Stakeholders United Movement.
All right, cool.
Yes, it is. Okay. Non-political.
is the one without the
That's not the right one.
No, that's not the right one. Yeah,
No, that's not the right one.
No, let me see if I get the right one before we bring in our guests. There was another one that I think was more important than that one. Let me see if I found this here. What did I do with that one? I'll have to look for that one.
It should say pastor something.
Oh yeah. All right, you know what? I know where I could get that one. Yeah, Tommy. I could get that one in YouTube. That's easier to get it there.
It should say pastor something. I can't remember what it is, but I know some of the title is pastor.
Yeah. No, you're right. Let me get that one. I just want to show that one to them.
I mean, not the pushback movement.
Yeah, that one was very disappointing to see what happened with the commissioner of police. Let me see here. Hold on. There we go.
The whole thing is this. She comes out.
All right. Yeah, she came out and she collected it.
They pray with her and she went back in.
Yeah, they prayed with her and she went back in. Here it is right here. All right, here it is. All right, so we got it. All right, hold on. Let me bring this in now. Yeah, this is the one where it was very disappointing to see that this happened with respect to Miss Erla Christopher. Here it is.
They're trivializing that position. That's what that is.
Yeah, it's correct, is right.
We are praying with you. We support you. We support you. We support you. Not your lead. We support you. Not your lead. We support you. You support. We are, hold your hands. We are about to pray with the Commissioner of Police.
Any designations on the table,
So this is the pushback here too.
Yeah, I understand.
When they say they support her and not Rowley, so.
But you see how we are trivializing an important position as the Commissioner of Police and turning it into political shenanigans. And it's sad. It's totally sad. And unacceptable. Right? That is why we in the condition that we are in. Because these gentlemen are trivializing a position as a Commissioner of Police. Or you come use a pastor, you go and pray with the Commissioner of Police. Use a pastor, and the Commissioner of Police should not allow them people to do all that, man.
She looked like she was not ambushed, but they knew her runnings. So they ran into her.
No, the whole thing seems staged to me.
Yeah.
Let the spokesperson come out and collect the package.
Yeah, there should be a protocol. She shouldn't be accepting stuff from the public like that. Even though it was videotape, I think there should be protocol. Anything. She has
it's one big show. It's one big puppy show.
She holds an important position. So I wouldn't take no, you know.
I'm probably just a little bit too harsh, but in my opinion, there's a big papi show.
No, Tommy, you are correct but Tommy, but she allowed herself to participate in the circus.
Oh.
She shouldn't allow that. Let's bring in our guest. Dr. Arjoon, let's bring in our guest. Hello, Dr. Arjoon. A special welcome in the village with the DAT Triplets. That is Diana. I am Ansem, yours truly, and T is Tony. Welcome to In the Village with the DAT Triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. How are you, sir?
Good evening, and thank you very, very much for having me. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Well, that's a good thing, you know, when we do have quite a few people here in the village, and we call it a village because we think it's important for us to impart knowledge, you know, on especially those in the diaspora and those that listen back home, because, you know, it's very rarely we get people like you know, in the village talking to the diaspora about, you know, the economy in Trinidad and Tobago, you know, talking about different things like the IMF. And, you know, we had an off-air discussion when we talk about real GDP and nominal GDP, you know, is that, you know, some people may need to get just a better understanding, you know, about that and so many other good things we're going to speak about tonight, you know, but, you know, welcome to Individually DAT Triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM.
Hi, Dr. Arjoon. You enjoy my next homeland?
Oh, I really did. I really did. I wish I was still there, as a matter of
fact. Right. Good. You know, you look kind of like, Ansem, look at him. Doesn't he look, remember Adam, the little piano player?
Adam, the little piano player?
Yeah, Adam Colasar, the little piano player. He looked like a grown-up Adam, right?
Anna, don't get him into trouble now.
Yeah.
Oh, my, getting him into trouble. He looks like he reminds me of Adam, a little pianist.
Somebody's going to have to answer questions as to who's Adam's dad. Don't do that.
Oh, man. Oh, Lord. You see where your mind goes?
You know, like this Adam person you're talking about.
You think you know him?
No. I've never heard of him before, but to me now, if I could get some of his pianist skills, that would be a good thing.
You look like you're related to Adam. Yeah.
So just a little background. Dr. Arjoon is a lecturer in finance and economics at the University of West Indies, St. Augustine campus, Trinidad, West Indies. So Dr. Arjoon, you lecture in finance and economics. What different classes do you teach?
So I teach financial management, international financial management. Those are two separate courses. I teach quantitative methods, managerial economics as well. And at the PhD level, I teach PhD macroeconomics. And I also teach, from time to time, financial econometrics.
Financial economics.
So I have a wide array of courses in the portfolio of courses that the university has me delivering.
Okay. How long you been at UE?
Since about 2014. Prior to that, I did my PhD at the University of Nottingham, my master's and PhD at the University of Nottingham, and then I stayed on for a bit to work there as a lecturer, both in their UK campus and at their campus in China, in Ningbo, China.
Wow.
Then an opportunity presented itself to come back home to Trinidad, so I decided to take it.
You know, I think what we want to start with tonight, right, is we want to just start with GDP, you know, gross domestic product, because I think sometimes the people in Trinidad some people may not understand how important it is when we talk about GDP, right?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, we're going to start there, and just to give people a little background, when we talk about GDP, basically, gross domestic product, GDP, is the total market value of all financial goods and services produced within our country's borders in a specific period of time. It is the most commonly used measure of the size of an economy. So Dr. Arjoon, when we talk about that now, let's kind of educate the audience about the difference between real GDP and nominal GDP. And then we're going to talk about the economy in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah. So you always hear, especially as of late in Trinidad and Tobago, politicians referring to GDP, and sometimes a few of them can try to spin it in a way to try to make things look very favorable, and that's when they talk about nominal GDP. Now, what is GDP? GDP typically is the value of the goods and services that are produced in a country over a period of time. It's typically measured either quarterly or annually. Now, let's say in Trinidad and Tobago, I produced 100 commodities. And those commodities, so it's just 100 to make it simple, and those commodities are each priced at $100. Okay? So the price is 100 and you produce 100 commodities. So therefore, your nominal GDP, which is the value at today's price of the goods and services that you produce, will simply be 100 times 100, which gives you 10,000.
Correct.
Now, what if next year I produce only 90 commodities, not 100? It dropped by 10 to 90, but the price went up to $120, so it's no longer $100. So the amount I produce has dropped, but the price of whatever I produce on the market has gone up to $120. So that 90 by 120 gives us $10,800. So look at that. I produce less. The country has produced less in the year, the subsequent year, but our GDP level went up. How can that be? It went up because of that factor of prices. In the first year, it was 10,000. In the second year, it was 10,800. So that is what nominal GDP does. It tells you the value of the goods and services that you've produced in a particular time period at the existing price levels. Now, remember, prices are always going up. So that makes that figure a bit biased. The better thing to do is to look at real GDP,
Correct.
which takes away that element or that bias of prices. So what they do, they have a particular base year. Let's say that in Trinidad, we're using the base year right now at 2012. So essentially, from 2012 onwards, we are calculating our GDP using 2012 prices on only 2012 prices. So in doing so, it's just a simple way of taking out that price element, which can distort our overall performance measurement, which is the GDP factor.
No, Dr. Arjoon. I think isn't it important to know that when we talk about real GDP, it's adjusted for inflation?
Yeah, well, that is exactly why we take out the price level. When you take away the price level, it means that you are eliminating that bias that inflation tends to bring on. Because, of course, the higher the inflation level, it means your prices are going up at a faster rate. So you could be producing less and less quantities each year. But the bottom line is that prices are going up. So when you multiply the price by that quantity, you get a higher figure, which is why you eliminate that overall price factor, that inflation factor from the equation in order to get an accurate depiction then of how much you are producing per year. Remember, to look at our economic performance, prices will distort it because prices are always going up. Remember, once you have a positive inflation figure, what is inflation? Inflation is the rate at which prices are going up. In other words, it is the percentage change in prices. So if once you have a positive inflation value, whether it's 1% or 5% or 10%, it means that prices are going up. And you hardly ever find a negative inflation figure, meaning that prices are going down. So once that inflation figure is positive, it means prices are going up, which naturally means that your nominal GDP is going to go up at the same time once your production level is maintained at a certain level, or even if it drops by a particular amount. Once it doesn't drop by a large proportionate value, your nominal GDP will go up once your prices are going up, which is why it's important to take away that element of prices, to take away that inflation aspect, and use the real GDP, which measures your economic performance, your production levels at constant prices, where prices are not changing over time. So they have a base year. In Trinidad, we're using about 2012 right now. So we're using only 2012 prices. So that factor where prices are increasing or decreasing, we're not bothering with that. We are looking at real GDP, which is telling us an accurate extent to which production levels overall in the country are either going up or contracting. And when we look at the data, now unlike some of my other colleagues at the university, I have no problems with the IMF data because, I mean, the IMF is one of the leading economic institutions in the world. And when we look at the IMF's data, what we would see is that last year in 2022, their estimates put our GDP growth at 2.4%, approximately 2.48%. So let's say about 2.5%, meaning that our real GDP or production levels at constant prices would have increased from 2021 to 2022 by 2.5%. And it is projected to grow even further by about 3.2% this year, and according to the IMF, continue along a positive growth trajectory up until 2028, which is where their data set projections, that is, stops. However, one thing I want to caution about, and I've said this many times in the local mainstream media here in Trinidad and Tobago, remember, like the majority of the world out there, our economy would have been pulled down. Our economic performance would have been pulled down substantially because of the effects of the pandemic. I mean, we would have had about 2 lockdowns going on for months extensively. The spending levels in the country would have been poor. Production levels in terms of the operation levels, in terms of the private sectors functioning, etc. All of these would have been significantly declining within the last 2 years, from 2020 and 2021. So, as we would have spoken about earlier this week in our conversation over the phone, when you hit rock bottom, when you get to the bottom of the barrel, and I really hope that is the worst we can possibly do as a country, and we can't get any worse than that at any point in time in the future. When you get to the bottom of the barrel, like many other countries did, there's only one place you can go thereafter, and that is up. So yes, it does mean that the GDP levels or production levels, while it would have tanked in 2020 and 2021 subsequently, now it's starting to go back up. So naturally, we would expect positive growth in the economy. However, I think it is more prudent for our authorities, the state, and those in charge of economic policy, etc., to not fall in a comfort zone just as yet. Because yes, the country is back on a positive growth trajectory. But when we look at the GDP data from the IMF, if we were to compare where we were before, in the immediate pre-pandemic period in 2019, our GDP levels, real GDP levels, that is, are actually still lower. To be specific, in 2019, our real GDP would have been $163.7 billion, but at the end of 2022, is about 10 billion lower, is about 153 billion. So that is actually about a 6.3% decline between 2019 and 2022. So what we need to strive to be doing is, at the very least, bringing back our economic performance to where we were in 2019, or even bettering our performance in 2019. Comparing ourselves to last year and the year before is really comparing yourselves to 2 extreme periods, 2 outlier periods then. You want to compare yourself to when there were fairly normal circumstances in the country, and that would have been in 2019. So I think it's actually more prudent to look at our performance in 2022 relative to 2019, and then this year bring back up our performance to where we were in 2019, or even bettering that.
So Dr. Arjoon, I'm not an economist. I don't like mathematics, and they, forever they're always trying to find X. So I say X supposed to stay lost, right? I was reading something, the Economist Intelligence, EIU, and specifically pertaining to Trinidad and Tobago. And in brief, it stated the economy will expand for a second consecutive year. I wanted to explain a term I came across in 2023, but the pace of growth will slow to, they say, a 2.3% from an estimated 2.5% in 2022 as energy prices moderate. Economic policy making in the near term will therefore be shaped by trends in energy prices, which we believe will be lower than the government's budget assumptions for the 2023 fiscal year. We then forecast a continued albeit anemic GDP growth for the remainder of 2024, 2027. What is that albeit anemic term?
Okay, so it essentially means that the GDP growth is not going to be very strong. So if we come back to the IMF data, I'm actually looking at it as we speak. Remember, they have projected a growth level of about 3.2% this year. However, that growth is likely to slow to about 2.3% next year in 2024.
Correct.
It'll be slightly higher in 2025, according to the IMF, about 2.7%. Then by 2026, it'll go down again to 1.9%. Then in 2027, 1.5, and then in 2028, around 1.5, 1.4, 1.5, according to their data. So as you can see here, these are growth levels that are not very high. It means the economy is marginally, the performances in terms of GDP is marginally increasing each year. So one of the key reasonings behind that is we don't expect our energy sector to meaningfully pick up within the next few years, at least within the next 5 years. When we were to, so as you all would appreciate, and I'm sure the diaspora out there is very much aware of this, our energy sector traditionally accounts for the vast majority of our GDP growth, or well, of our GDP performance, that is, our production levels. It accounts for the vast majority, usually, of our fiscal income, fiscal revenues, the revenues the government makes per year. It traditionally would account for that, for most of it. And it traditionally would account for most of the revenues that we get from our trading or with other countries, our international trade. Now, what we've been seeing so far since 2015, and I'm using 2015 because that is when the economy actually started to record negative growth. Before 2015, we had positive growth, but since 2015, it's been negative. So that's why I'm benchmarking or comparing us to where we were when we first started to decline. In 2015, our oil production on average per day was about 78,000 barrels per day, right? So let's say about between 78 or 79,000 barrels per day. Now, as of late, that has dropped significantly to about 58,000 barrels per day. So you're looking at about a 26% drop in oil production per day between 2015 and 2022. Now, remember, this is one of the commodities that tends to account for the lion's share then of our GDP production. Then you look at natural gas, and we are more of a natural gas-based country compared to oil. So natural gas at the end of 2015, well, in 2015, the average production per day was about 3.8 billion standard cubic feet. And then when you look at in 2022, the average production per day was about 2.7 billion standard cubic feet per day. So that's a 30% decline. And if you go even further to LNG, liquefied natural gas, the LNG production would have dropped by about 37% from 2015 to 2022. Reason being, most of our reserves, especially our gas reserves, comes from the Columbus Basin. The Columbus Basin is a very mature area. The reserves, the fields in the Columbus Basin tend to be quite mature. Mature meaning it's been around for many, many decades. So as it stands, the production coming out of the fields are not as healthy as we would have liked it to be, as they would have been in the past. Does this mean, however, that we're not going to come across or stumble across some new reserves with that can actually beef up our production levels? No, it doesn't mean that. We certainly can. For that, however, you need extensive and expensive capital investment from the energy companies. Now, what we found globally, capital investment.
Okay, we are.
It's frozen.
Yeah. So we gotta wait for him to come.
It's frozen.
Yeah. So, folks, we have with us economist Dr. Arjoon. Okay. Here we go.
Yeah.
You frozen there a little bit. Go ahead.
Okay. So so as I was saying, the level of capital investment by these energy companies have not returned to the pre-pandemic level, despite the fact that last year oil and gas prices were actually very, very high and attractive for the energy companies. They would have earned substantial revenues and profits because of the price element. But given how volatile prices have been behaving since 2015, energy companies have not been taking the step to ramp up or to meaningfully ramp up the levels of oil and gas exploration activities compared to the pre-pandemic levels. So capital expenditure, especially for exploration, has not been as high as it was back in the pre-pandemic era, in 2019 era, or even before that. So that is one key factor why our natural gas production and even our oil production levels have dropped and are still quite a cause for concern then within the coming years. And of course, since oil and gas traditionally accounts for the larger part of our GDP, our actual national production levels, it means that not only would we have seen a drop in production levels in the last few years reflected by negative GDP growth, but also in the next coming years, yes, we are going to see positive growth, but marginal positive growth, in that we're not expecting any real or meaningful increase in production of these hydrocarbon commodities. So where's the increase in production likely to come from? That is where the manufacturing sector comes into play. And the manufacturing sector over the last 18 months have in my view, been the hero of the TNT economy. So what happened, as I'm sure you all will appreciate being in the United States, is that when there was the COVID lockdown, people weren't spending. And of course, the fiscal packages that not only the United States gave, but many other countries out there gave, where people got their income levels or lack thereof supplemented then by the government. So you might get a check for $1,500 US ever so often, whatever the case is in your post every now and then. Now, a lot of people who kept on to their jobs, they saved their money because they couldn't go out and spend. It was a lockdown. People got money as well from the government. So when economies reopened, people had a lot of money to spend. People weren't spending as they usually would. So what happened was revenge spending to make up for that lost time where they didn't get to spend their money. Now, our local manufacturers here in Trinidad and Tobago, and we have to applaud them for this, they took advantage of that surge in the spending levels by not only the United States, but by many other developed countries. So what they did, they utilized, and we have to give kudos to the Ministry of Finance for doing this as well. The Ministry of Finance gave them an allocation of $100 million US extra. Our manufacturing sector rely heavily on US dollars, on foreign exchange, to be able to import their raw materials, their machinery, etc., in order to engage in production, to meet their production and whatever orders they may have. So they ramped up their production to somewhat significantly and were able to export even more to these other countries to satisfy some of the added demand for spending coming out of the United States and other developed countries. So our manufacturing sector, because of this, if we were to look at the data, I'm just trying to pull it up here really quickly for you. If we looked at the data, we would see that the manufacturing sector would have grown by a whopping 17.6% between 2021 and 2022. And if we consider, like I said earlier, I think it's better to compare ourselves to where we were in the pre-pandemic period. The manufacturing sector grew by 20%. Now, we have to make a distinction here, because here in Trinidad and Tobago, the manufacturing sector has some years ago, the authorities changed how we classify manufacturing. So now with manufacturing, they've put in some energy in manufacturing. They put in the manufacturing of petrochemicals in there. So
I think he's
frozen.
He's frozen.
In his connectivity.
So folks, we have with us Dr. Arjoon tonight talking about the economy.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're hearing you now. There we go.
Yeah. So as it pertains now to any type of refining activity, like for example, the manufacturing, the production of LNG, from gas to liquefied natural gas, production using natural gas to create petrochemicals. They've moved that now and classifying all of that under manufacturing. So when we look at the data and we take away that element of energy, excluding when we take away that element of energy, when we take away that element of petrochemicals, the manufacturing sector grew very healthy since 2019. When we put it in the equation, however, that's where you found the manufacturing sector, including then those petrochemicals, it would have declined overall since 2019. So I think it's more important to focus on manufacturing, excluding the petrochemicals aspect, excluding the hydrocarbons or the aspect. And when we look at that, sectors like the food and beverage sector, which has been growing magnificently in Trinidad and Tobago. Since 2019, food and beverage grew by 34%. So imagine that. Even during the pandemic, the food and beverage sector still managed to increase their production levels, still managed to increase their exports, still managed to increase their earnings of foreign exchange for the local economy. And that, I think, is something to be they need to be congratulated for that, because they, in spite of all these supply chain problems that we were hearing about every day in the international media, the manufacturing sector, especially subsectors like the food and beverage, etc., they were able to utilize whatever limited resources they had and ramp up their production levels. So once they are to continue along this path where their activities remain high and continue to improve, that is very well going to help to buffer any declines somewhat, and to a limited extent, of course, because manufacturing is not as big as the energy sector, but it will help to buffer some of the declines then in our earnings from the energy sector. The trick is that the state needs to allocate more resources, allocate more funding, ensure that's easier to do business then within companies in the manufacturing sector, to ensure that element of the private sector in Trinidad and Tobago is able to continually progress and build in terms of their overall contribution to the local economy.
But Dr. Arjoon, the man on the ground, which is important, the man on the ground was saying that all these good things are happening in the food and beverage industry, right? But every day I wake up, I'm paraphrasing here, seeing prices going up. Every single week, it seems that prices going up. When are the consumers of the country going to be able to say that, you know what, we're dropping this price on something, the consumers are going to benefit? Because it's like every day you wake up, everything going up in price, and there's no break for the man on the ground.
Yeah, well, I completely agree with you in that regard. I share that sentiment. And in my profession, I'm not just an economist at the university. I'm also the vice president of one of the leading chambers of commerce in the country, the Shirguana Chamber of Industry and Commerce. So part of what I do is liaise with a lot of the supermarkets in our district and find out, well, why are prices not dropping? One of the reasons is that, remember, apart from the production of food and beverages locally, much of the raw materials that go into that food and beverage production, some of the inputs, then the ingredients and whatnot, and even the machinery, you find that, yes, even though the prices of some of these ingredients, etc., would have gone down, many of them chose to actually keep the prices at a particular level. And then there are also those that rely on the distributors who are actually importing some of these items, some of these commodities that fill our supermarket shelves. And if the distributors are not dropping the price, then the supermarket is not likely to drop the price either, because essentially they're going to be functioning at almost a loss, if not at a loss. So many supermarkets, that's one of the first things that they tell us. Well, look, the distributors have not been dropping their prices, so we can't afford to drop our prices either, especially given the financial stress that some of us would have been exposed to during the pandemic. So a lot, not just our Chamber of Commerce, but a lot of other chambers of commerce have called out to the Minister of Trade and And I mean, I know the individual. She's actually a very a welcoming individual. She's always willing to listen and to help the private sector. So there's been a lot of calls to the Minister of Trade and even the other authorities to see how they can address this problem, because wheat prices internationally have started to fall, but yet still flour prices locally have remained high. The other factor, however, to consider is that some of the local food processors, like those who are involved in the manufacturing of flour, they tend to purchase wheat at a prearranged contractual price. So many of them at this point would have purchased wheat at a contracted price when international prices were high. So they would have pretty much bought in bulk, have a lot of wheat in storage, and that wheat in storage would have come at a very high price. So to be fair to them, they may not have dropped prices just as yet, those who are involved in that type of business, because they need to use out whatever stocks of wheat that they may have first. And then when a new order is placed, once that is placed at a lower price, then we hope to see, and I use the word hope very cautiously, we would hope to see a drop in the prices that they're offering in the supermarket shelves. But as it stands, I know that a few that several of them, they are still utilizing the inputs then in their production that they would have had to pay a high price for, because those prices were arranged at a contractual level many months ago.
So Dr. Arjoon, I just wanted to back up a little bit. So you are agreeing with the Minister of Finance regarding the IMF recent economic countries assessment of Trinidad and Tobago, right? You are agreeing with that assessment of the IMF and what the Minister of Finance come out and say that Trinidad, there's a positive outlook for Trinidad and Tobago. You are agreeing with that?
Well, yeah, certainly, because the figures show, the reason I agree with it brings me back to one of my very first comments. When you hit rock bottom now, and again, what the ministers, not just him, but the politicians tend to do is to make mass with numbers, right? I like to put it that way. They make mass with numbers. You get a positive set of information, a positive statistic.
That's just the internet, folks.
Connectivity.
Reason.
That's just the internet. Folks, we have with us Economist.
They want to paint a positive picture. Can you hear me? Am I back?
Yeah, we hear you. You back.
Yeah. They want to paint a positive picture for the overall country, because in saying, well, the IMF has told us that we are projected to grow by 3.2% this year, they try to spin it from the angle that it's really their doing, when truth and in fact is not. What has happened is whatever growth we would have had is largely because of the private sector activities, not necessarily state-led activities, not necessarily because of any meaningful economic strategy that the state level authorities would have put into play. It's not because of that. It's really because of what the private sector has done, their contribution then towards our economic activity. So that is one key thing to remember. Now, we come back to this thing about GDP. Again, GDP just looks at your total production levels in the country. So as you would appreciate, our economy is largely undiversified, meaning that the bulk of what we produce tend to focus more on those in the extractive industries, the oil and gas, etc. Right? So that in itself suggests that we have a very big level of income and wealth inequality in Trinidad and Tobago. So if I were to give you some figures now, our workforce, let's say about just over 220,000 persons from our workforce, according to our Central Statistical Office data. Just over 220,000 persons are earning a salary each month of about $6,000 and less. So maximum $6,000. Now, in the grand scheme of things, that's just over 1/3 of our overall workforce. And where prices are at right now, and where prices have been in the recent past, several years, up to several years ago, $6,000 is not likely to take you anywhere really, in terms of the amount you can save, in terms of how much you can satisfy not only your needs, but the family's needs as well, in terms of their educational needs, being able to afford the normal amenities like food, etc., pay your utilities. There's a lot of talk now about our electricity prices going up very soon. So at that level, when we looked at even we drill down in the data even further, about 46% in low-income households, 46% of their income goes on food alone. So when almost half of your income goes on food alone, feeding your family alone, what is really left to be saved? So despite the fact that, yes, our economy is on a positive growth trajectory, and I do agree, we are on a positive growth trajectory, we have to be very careful how we interpret this, because even if you're on a positive growth trajectory, it does not mean that the quality of life of the man on the street or the small micro, the micro and small medium enterprise business owner, etc., it does not mean that their quality of life has improved. We in Trinidad and Tobago have a very big problem in terms of income inequality, wealth inequality. When we earn money, when we earn wealth, it is not distributed evenly or even fairly evenly amongst the population. That's why when we consider, I remember the minister a few days ago was talking about our GDP per capita. While our GDP per capita does remain healthy, that takes our overall GDP and distributes it uniformly across the entire country. But that to me is not a very good economic indicator to show our quality of life, because it is not, because our income distribution is not even, is not uniform in Trinidad and Tobago. So that is something we have to be mindful of. You can have 10% economic growth, but if you have a significant segment of the population not earning a meaningful income every single month, then that could be a bit meaningless.
Dr. Arjoon, we have a question from the chat, and I have done research with respect to the poverty level in Trinidad and Tobago, and there seem to be different numbers across the board, right? For example, I'm looking at it, they say a poverty level is $665 per month. We're supposed to living below the poverty line then, which is equivalent to US $130 per month. What exactly is the poverty line in Trinidad and Tobago? The poverty line in Trinidad and Tobago. I think he's frozen. Okay.
He's frozen.
He's frozen. Yeah. All right, so folks, we are talking with Dr. Arjoon. Yeah. Yes, Dr. Arjoon. Yeah. I was saying, right, I kind of throw out some numbers, based on, they give you different numbers with respect to the poverty line in Trinidad and Tobago. And I was saying that, for example, one place says it's $665 TT per month, which is US $130 per month. And I'm saying, like, I'm trying to understand, because you are there in Trinidad and the CSO. By the way, before I go to that, right, some people question the numbers by the IMF because they feel the numbers are coming from the Ministry of Finance as opposed to the CSO office, right? Because some people say, well, the Ministry of Finance just giving the IMF whatever numbers they want so Trinidad and Tobago could look good, right? Just clarify that a little bit.
Right. So to answer your second question first,
right,
the Ministry of Finance, while they do provide the IMF with information, the IMF clearly states it time and time again that their official source of data and information for Trinidad and Tobago is the CSO, not the Ministry of Finance and not the central bank. So the Ministry of Finance would, for certain things, for most things as a matter of fact, rely on the CSO for that particular information. And you have to give kudos to the CSO as well, because in recent times, since the last year and a half, the CSO have improved their scale of operations. I mean, before, just up until a few years ago, you tried to get certain critical data or even timely data from the CSO, and it just didn't exist. But now you can go online, and the suite of information that the CSO, the suite of data that the CSO has to provide has improved significantly. It still could be better. It still could be a bit more timely. I mean, unemployment figures, for example, are not up to date compared to what you would get in the United States, etc. Even inflation figures are still not up to date relative to other countries like the United States, but they have improved in terms of the timeliness so far. So one cannot discount that. However, the main unofficial source for information that is provided to the IMF is the Central Statistical Office, not the Ministry of Finance and not the central bank.
That puts that to rest, that the Ministry of Finance is playing, a numbers game and giving the IMF certain numbers for the country to look good. That puts that to rest.
You see, the other thing to remember, I mean, the Minister of Finance, while he is the Minister of Finance, and of course they always want to look good, right, one has to keep in mind that the information that he puts out there, remember, a lot of that the Exchequer has to go through it. Many other technocrats have to go through it. We are a small country. If wrong information were being propounded in the public, I would think, and this is just my personal view, somebody somewhere is going to leak the fact that, listen, that is not the right information. This is the right information. If the figures are being distorted, somebody in one of those technocrats is going to leak the fact that, listen, what that 3.2% that the IMF come up with this year is not really 3.2%, it's more like 1%. Somebody could very well come out and say that. There are a lot of stages then, a lot of individuals that have to process this information, go through this information before it gets disseminated to the public or before it is provided to the IMF for them to come up with their projections. So somebody somewhere is going to confess, listen, hold back a little bit. Something is wrong here. So that is another thing that in my view, we have to keep in mind.
Dr. Arjoon, you mentioned the income wealth inequality.
Wait a minute. We're going to go for a quick station identification.
Cool.
We're going to come back. So, Dr. Arjoon, stay with us, for another few minutes. We're going to go for a quick station identification. It's in the village with the DAT Triplets and WZYE 95.9 FM. We have with us tonight Economist Dr. Arjoon, who is telling us about, the economy, talking about the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. So stick right back after this short message. It's in the village with the DAT Triplets on WZYE 95.9.
You're listening to WZYE 95.9 FM. You are listening to WZYE 95.9 FM, the most influential name in Caribbean radio in the tri-state area. Broadcasting from East Orange, New Jersey, the most influential name in Caribbean radio, WZYE 95.9 FM.
Back with you. It's in the village with the DAT Triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. We have with us tonight Dr. Arjoon, Economist Dr. Arjoon, and he has joined us, and we are talking about the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. Diana, go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Arjoon. I had sent you 3 questions before, so I'm trying to remember one of them. Creating intergenerational wealth for the young people, right? And you mentioned that there's an income wealth inequality. But banks are aware of this, right? That there is this So what measures or what matrix do they use? Let's say a young person wants to go in and get they have a job, they want to get a loan, they want to start a business, but the banks are aware that there's an income wealth inequality. How do they navigate that? What matrix do they use to determine whether this person is eligible or ineligible for a loan?
Well, I think part of the reason that we have that income inequality and wealth generation inequality in the country is propounded by the banks. I mean, I hope none of my friends at the banks are listening right now. I'm getting upset, but the truth is the truth, right? And we would have seen that in the pandemic era and even in the immediate post-pandemic era, where many micro and small business owners were trying to get loans, and a lot of them were denied loans. Now, there was a catch-22 to this situation because the government had capitalized. They set up a SME loan program, a small and medium-sized enterprise loan program with the commercial banks that was supposed to make it easier for the commercial for these organizations, these businesses then to be able to acquire loan financing. And I think for the first 2 years, the interest would have been waived, and the government provided a guarantee. So let's say you couldn't repay the loan, the government was bound then to step in and repay the loan for the individual in concern. However, there were times when many people could not access these loans for various reasons. Things like their taxes weren't up to date, or they weren't paying their taxes at all. They were unregistered businesses. Then some of them couldn't get loans because they may not necessarily have had good financial last few years.
Frozen again. He's frozen down.
No, he's gonna come back. He's gonna come back. There he is.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you back.
Yeah. So as I said, the economy was in a recession since 2015. That would have hurt the sales levels then of many elements in the private sector. That would have hurt a lot of their revenues and their profitability. So when banks looked at some of these financial statements that some of these small enterprises were providing, and even looked at their projections, and if they were not satisfied with their revenue streams and their projected revenue streams, then many of them would have been denied these loans. So it can be quite difficult at times to be able to secure loans from the commercial banks. And then you have individuals that are trying to get loans for the very first time. As an individual trying his hand as a small businessman trying to get a new loan. And again, if he doesn't have adequate collateral to back up this loan, it could be denied. If he himself, his personal finances did not appear healthy for quite some time, again, it could be denied. And that is the case for, unfortunately, many individuals. There is inequity in many instances in how loans are disseminated and even the interest that is charged on these loans. So, for example, the prime lending rate right now in Trinidad and Tobago is, I think, somewhere over 9%, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't checked it in a while, but I think it's somewhere over 9%. That's the prime interest. The prime interest rate is what you give to your best customers, your most credit-worthy customers. Now, that really ought to be the interest rate then, if it's what you're giving to your most
Is the internet giving difficulty?
Yeah, he might want to log out and come in again. The bandwidth probably busy.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, what I want to try to do is log in with my phone because I'm not sure why the internet is giving this problem now.
Okay, you wanna go back out and come back in?
I'm actually trying to come back in as we speak.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
We're being taken to school tonight, Anselm.
Yeah,
Knowledge is power, eh?
Folks, we have with us. Okay, here he is. All right. Turn it on a little bit. Okay, let me bring you. Okay, here we are.
Right. So as I was saying, that prime lending rate is what you are supposed to give to your most creditworthy customers. Now, when several large businesses go to the banks for loans, they ain't getting that interest at 9%, you know. They get all kind of a nice 3%, 4%, etc. So then what does the bank do to make up for that lost interest that the larger company does not necessarily get charged, doesn't have to pay? They charge it to the small consumer, the small businessman, or the private consumer that is coming to them for a loan. So when a business, a large business, or even a medium-sized business is paying about 4 or 5% on a loan, a small enterprise is paying about 12% on a loan. So that naturally is going to stymie or contribute to stymieing the growth and the development of that small enterprise. Now, the Ministry of Trade over the last 3 or 4 years, I believe, they have started an SME program where they're providing funding, essentially funding to certain organizations, certain SMEs. Then once they meet a particular criteria, the main criteria being that apart from being able to show a solid business plan, etc., because you don't want to give money randomly to anyone, but you show a solid business plan, but you need to show that you belong to a particular sector that the Ministry of Trade deems necessary for the growth of the overall economy going forward. And that has helped a few SMEs so far. So that I think is an excellent initiative, and I think going forward, the Ministry of Trade, they deserve a bigger allocation in the national budget from the Ministry of Finance for that SME program, because SMEs are very critical in terms of not just providing employment, etc., but major diversification for the overall economy in particular, driving our growth agenda at the same time.
You know, but Doc, you know, this kind of bothers me a little bit. You had stated that those SME loans were guaranteed by the government, right? So therefore, I mean, if you take a risk on some small business, right, and somehow the business didn't do what it's supposed to do, the government will pay back the loan, right?
Yeah, that's theoretically what it said, because the government explicitly stated that they're guaranteeing these loans. That was one of the stipulations for it.
Right. So the commercial bank is not really losing anything, right? All right.
Yeah. So the thing is, however,
you went off your camera.
Yeah. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that yes, they were guaranteed. Now, part of the criteria to get these loans is that you had to be a registered business. Now, unfortunately, here in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a serious number of organizations, small enterprises that are not registered, so they're not paying any taxes. So, of course, if they go for a loan, the bank is going to tell them no. Whereas what really ought to have happened is that you go for a loan, okay, no problem. However, one major stipulation, you have to go and get registered this very instant. And they could have facilitated that. That would have helped the government to start collecting in the future more taxes, because you are encouraging more individuals, more companies to become registered, and when they're registered, they have to start paying their taxes. And at the same time, it's a win-win, because the organization that come for the loan is likely to get their loan. That is one thing that could have been addressed, one issue that could have been addressed, a win-win situation there. But apart from that, remember, banks, they set criteria, they set standards adhering to international guidelines in order to provide loans. And the banking system in Trinidad and Tobago is very similar to the Canadian banking system. Of course, we know we have plenty of Canadian banks here, relative to the size of TNT, and a lot of them tend to follow even the local, the indigenous ones like FCB, etc. They follow the Canadian banking model to a large extent, a very conservative model. So the criteria to meet, even though there's a guarantee from the government, they still impose the criteria. And that, I think, was not necessarily the best thing to do. They should have eased up on the criteria a bit, so that more entities, more deserving entities, could have acquired these loans. Because what we found at some point in time, entities that were getting the loans did not necessarily need the loan. Because if you are showing that your health, your revenue streams in the recent past was very healthy, what do you need a loan today for? Relative.
So I was going to say that can open up an eye for discrimination in how we offer these loans. But I want to go to a
Sorry,
question.
I'm actually here. You probably are breaking up.
Yes, somebody. Hold on. Okay, hold on a minute. Okay. Let me add you back this way. Are you hearing us?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
All right. That was, because you were on twice. That's why. So someone says, ask your guests if trade unions are aware of the GDP. If so, why are they refusing the 4% increase?
Well, you see, it doesn't just really have to do with the GDP. It really has to do with the overall price level increases for many years. So when you found that when we find that in Trinidad and Tobago, the last salary increase for the public service would have happened in 2013, and since then the prices would have increased substantially. In fact, what is the commodity then that we tend to produce? That we tend to consume the most of here in Trinidad, well, not just here in Trinidad and Tobago, but everywhere. The main item that we tend to consume is essentially food. So food prices, right? In fact, I have the data here. Let me just calculate it really quickly. So food prices, when we look at the index of retail food prices, that is the index created by the CSO and utilized by the central bank and all the other authorities to tell us, well, how on aggregate, how has food prices increased from then till now? Now, at the end of 2013, when we had this increase in salaries, the food price index would have been in the vicinity of about 89.4. And sorry, not 89.4, 86. And then it went up to about 150. So if we were to calculate, what was that percentage increase? So
89 by 150?
Yeah, 89 to 150. So you're looking at a 40.7% percentage increase in food prices alone since the last time they got a salary increase. So naturally, and as I said before, food is the most important item that we tend to consume on a daily basis. It is what we consume the most of on a daily basis. The low-income households spend over 46% of their income on food alone. So food prices going up by over 40% since the last time they got a salary increase. It is only natural that they are going to demand a higher salary increase, because the salary increase of 4% is not really going to help them in adequately or even nearly adequately meeting the overall increase in the cost of living that they would have seen over the last few years, especially with what is happening now.
Dr. Arjoon, I read somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, Trinidad and Tobago borrowed X amount of money from China?
Yeah, well, we've taken debt from China over several years now. The most recently, a lot of debt would have been taken because of the pandemic, acquiring financing from the pandemic. There was one thing I disagreed with that the Ministry of Finance did. The IMF had something that's known as during the pandemic. Of course, they introduced something known as the Rapid Financing Initiative. That initiative was actually taken advantage of by, I think, I want to say 9, but I believe the figure is more 13. But nonetheless, it was taken advantage of by several Caribbean countries. What that initiative was, you got funding.
That's just the internet, folks. Just bear with it. It's the internet.
Trinidad and Tobago.
So, folks, we have with us Economist Dr. Arjoon with us. Go ahead, Dr.
Yeah,
you back.
So that would have been financing given by the IMF at a very low interest rate. I think at that time it was about 1.25% interest. So it's very, very low. And all you had to do to acquire that financing was simply provide a letter of intent indicating, well, what you're going to use the money for. So Jamaica did it. And in fact, I remember looking at Jamaica's letter where they indicated what their economic performance was so far, what their budgeted revenues versus expenditures would have been for that particular year, what it ended up having to be, how much additional monies they had to spend on the pandemic, what they plan to use the money for. That is all the IMF really wanted from the government. But instead, we went the route of taking monies from China and the loan from China was given to us at over 2% interest. And I found that to be quite confusing, because why would you go to China, acquire a loan? The details of that loan is not, and not just that loan, but many transactions, financial transactions that we have with China, they're not very transparent. So there was not much information provided about that particular loan facility, except the fact that we had to pay a high interest rate on that loan, when you could have just gone to the IMF and gotten a similar loan facility for a lot less. But it would have been a lot less, and all you had to do was provide a letter of intent. And
but isn't the IMF requirements more stringent than China? They're not.
That was actually the point I was going to get to. This was not an IMF program. There's a difference between the IMF program. That is where what you call the extended fund facility comes into play. Like what Barbados would have been under recently, what Jamaica was under some years ago. That is an IMF program. This was not a program. This was emergency funding during times. And of course, we were in an emergency. We were in a pandemic. So there was a significant budgetary shortfall, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but in every other country globally. So the IMF were providing this financing without telling you what to do with the money. That's the difference between getting emergency funding and being in an IMF program. If we were in an IMF program, they would tell you, well, we want you to do X, Y, Z with this money. And these are the targets you have to set. You have to create 5,000 new jobs in this particular sector, et cetera, bring a surplus and whatnot.
Or maybe lay off people.
Or, well, maybe put measure. The IMF wouldn't tell you to lay off people. What they would do is tell you to tighten your conditions.
Yeah, that means lay off.
Yeah, would lead to at times laying off persons when you have to tighten.
Right.
However, this wasn't that type of program. This was simply emergency funding. So I found that was quite strange. Why take money from another country at a high interest rate when you could have at a lower interest rate, and all you have to do is write a letter?
And what collateral do the countries have to give as Trinidad and Tobago to get money from China?
Well, that I
you don't know.
I really don't know, so I'd rather not comment on that.
Yeah. So, Doc, here's the question, right?
But you do have the Belt and Silk Road Initiative that the Chinese government have embarked on for several years now, where many developing countries have signed on to, including Trinidad and Tobago. I think we were probably the first in the Western world to sign up to it, if I'm not mistaken. And the Belt and Silk Road Initiative, the official agenda for that is to promote trade and financing between the Chinese economy and other emerging economies, but more so for trade. And I remember in 2019, I actually went to Beijing to learn more about the Belt and Silk Road Initiative. The Chinese embassy, each year they send persons they handpick people then and send them to China to learn about the Belt and Silk Road Initiative. And there was one lecture that was being given by a former commerce minister, I think of one of the provinces, and he was talking about providing financing, foreign direct investment in countries under the Belt and Silk Road Initiative. But what it really was, and I even asked him about it, I confronted him about it during the lecture. I told him respectfully, sir, that is not foreign direct investment.
So, folks, we just got to bear with Dr. Arjoon because
the terms and conditions of these loans are not necessarily made aware or revealed then to the public. So we cannot, as a country, scrutinize, well, how much are we really paying back? What is the collateral? And we've seen countries there, like Sri Lanka, for example, when it came to their port, you took a loan, you can't pay it back. So you lose part of your country's assets, part of your country's resources. And certainly we don't want to end up in a position like that.
No, Dr. Arjoon, I think it's important when we look at the poverty level in Trinidad and Tobago, right? It says that the poverty level is the poverty line is $665 per month, which is equivalent to US $130 per month, right? And there's also some statistics. There's different statistics that will say that 10% of the people in Trinidad and Tobago are living below the poverty line, right? And they are saying that these numbers come from the Central Statistical Office as well. Talk to us a little bit about that, because sometimes the numbers seem to be in different places, different numbers.
Yeah, so I have not actually seen that information, that data that you're referring to. What I have seen, however, is the information. Actually, I was trying to pull it up a little while ago, but I'm not finding it on my laptop here. What I have seen, however, is the information on the CSO's website, where they tell you the overall income levels and how many people are working for that particular income. So, for example, how many people are getting $1,000 and less per month? How many people are getting $2,000 and less per month? And when I checked it most recently, about just over 220,000 persons are getting a maximum of 6,000 TT dollars and less per month. That is just under 1,000 US dollars per month. So, with respect to the figures that you are quoting, I've not actually seen those, but I think when we are talking about poverty levels, we have to corroborate it with price levels. And to say that 1/3 of our working population is making a maximum of $6,000 or less per month, that to me is quite troubling, because especially where prices are at, not just in TNT, but internationally speaking. In fact, the overall inflation levels, when we look at the index of retail prices, our core inflation levels. Our core inflation levels, the most recent figure we have is for January 2021, is about 6.1. But when we look at the overall inflation, the headline inflation, so we're including food now, and we are including energy commodities now, inflation is about 8.3%, which means that prices are increasing at an annual rate from January last year to January this year. Prices overall in the country have increased by 8.3%. And so far, the authorities have not taken any real steps to try to intervene to reduce this inflation level. But when we're talking about poverty, we have to talk about where prices are at the same time.
Well, of course. Go ahead, Tommy.
Dr. June, now energy is the main driver of our economy. Yes?
Certainly.
We have a situation next door where Guyana has become part of the players in the game. First to begin, how does that affect? Will that affect our energy business? Number one, and number two, should we be focusing on renewable energy in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, first of all, I think I'll answer your second question first. I think every country needs to start focusing on renewable energy. I'm not an individual that thinks countries have to solely go into this agenda of renewable energy. I think we have to strike a balance between the hydrocarbons and the renewables. Now, take for example last year with respect to Brazil. Brazil, many parts of Brazil utilize the hydrogen-based sources of electricity. Now, when you have drought conditions, as many parts of Brazil would have had last year, the drought conditions obviously affected their abilities to produce electricity. So parts of their country went without a supply of electricity, or went without a convenient and consistent supply of electricity for some time. Which is why if you had if you're using natural gas to power the grid at the same time, then when there are low windy conditions or when you have cloudy conditions, whatever the case may be, you could then rely on the natural gas to power the grid. And that is just one simple example of why you need a balance between natural gas or the hydrocarbons and the renewables. In fact, countries are supposed to be moving aggressively towards meeting this 2050 Paris Agreement, where we're bringing global warming to pre-industrial levels. Whether that can happen or not remains to be seen, but there are many countries across the world that are aggressively pushing this agenda. When you look at what happened in Europe, in countries like the United Kingdom and other countries in Europe, many of them tended to look towards Russia for the majority of their energy supply, for the majority of their gas. And because of the sanctions, because of the war, the Russia-Ukraine crisis, that severely interrupted their supply, their reliable supply of natural gas from Russia. So that taught a lesson to not just Europe, but the entire world, that you can't rely on one major source for your energy. You cannot rely on one major type of energy commodity. So now the European Union have budgeted about 1 trillion euros to spend over the next 10 years in developing their renewable energy agenda, so that they don't have to rely on hydrocarbons much. The United States, as you all may be aware, they have their Inflation Reduction Act, which focuses very heavily on renewables, on greener sources of energy. Countries like France, they're spending about another $100 million as well on the agenda of renewable energy. But my take is that you can't 100% focus on the renewables. You need to have that balance between more so natural gas and even commodities like methanol, which is derived from the natural gas, of course, and the renewables. Moving towards the Paris Accord agreement of net zero carbon emissions by 2050, the natural gas and LNG and methanol, they are all seen as transitory energy commodities then, in that before we can get to the renewables side of things, we can start reducing our carbon footprint, even though we're using the hydrocarbon still, which still has a fairly high level of carbon footprint. The natural gas, etc., they have the lower amounts of carbon footprint compared to oil and even coal, which is still extensively used in parts of Asia. So gas is seen, methanol and etc. is seen as transitionary towards this renewable energy agenda. But in my view, it needs to be a healthy balance of both natural gas or methanol, whatever the case is. Right now, many countries are starting to look at methanol instead of LNG as using to use to power shipping vessels. But again, as a transitionary fuel. So my take is that a healthy balance needs to be struck between the hydrocarbons and the renewables. Now, coming to the situation with Guyana, remember that in the short to medium term, there may be a high demand. There may be a high demand for the hydrocarbon commodities. Guyana is more so oil-based, so it will be in Guyana's best interest to capitalize on the large oil reserves that they have, at least over the next 10 to 15 years, because we don't know. It is touted right now by the international energy experts that over the next when the next decade has passed, the demand for hydrocarbons, especially oil and gas, are likely to be quite low, and there will be more of a drive towards the renewables. So I think if this comes to pass, that may make countries that are severely focused on the hydrocarbons, that will hurt their revenue stream. So now is the time for them to really capitalize on extraction and distribution and exports of much of these hydrocarbons. Opportunities for Trinidad, well, not just Trinidad, but a lot of countries have started in an immense amount of foreign direct investment into Guyana. One of the advantages that we could have provided towards Guyana, but it's not really working out that way so far, is the energy service industry. Our energy service industries tried to go into Guyana, still trying to go into Guyana and establish operations there, so that they don't necessarily have the expertise then in energy services. However, TNT does in terms of shipping, logistics, etc. Even simple things like the engineering and servicing of various energy equipment, energy-based transportation vehicles, etc. You name it. We have significant exposure and expertise in those areas. So that is one area that we can capitalize on, that TNT can capitalize on in Guyana. However, so far, Guyana has to be quite careful that they are not looking towards other developed nations and other nations that are also experts in the energy sector to take advantage of them and charging them more money for services that we here in TNT can provide at a cheaper rate.
Dr. Arjoon, wind energy, is there any Is that a lucrative area to get into?
Wind energy.
Yeah, for the country, especially
I think any aspect of the renewables, wind energy, solar energy. I mean, we're here in the Caribbean. The sun is blazing hot these days. These are things that we need to capitalize on, and there are small pockets of private companies in not just in TNT, but in Barbados and in other parts of the region that are trying to capitalize on this and explore the technology to provide to various homes. So, for example, there is a company close to where I live that have started to provide solar panels that are not necessarily going to power the entire home, but can be used to power certain major appliances like your fridges, your stoves, etc. So private entities are starting to do this. What governments now need to start doing is provide them with certain grants, certain incentives, then tax breaks, whatever the case may be, to encourage more private sector firms to get into this line of business, so that we can ease into this transition into renewables a bit faster compared to where we are at right now, which is actually very, very limited. But I think not just wind energy, coming back to your question, wind energy, solar energy are certain things that we need to capitalize on. However, we still need that balance between natural gas and the renewables.
So Dr. Arjoon, I want to go to the chat. There are a few questions, right? And when I come back, I want to talk about the Dragon field as well. It says, how much money does Trinidad owe in total from the IMF, China, World Bank, etc.? I mean, does the Central Statistics put out those numbers? Does the Central Statistics Office put out those numbers? He's frozen, right? So when he come back, we'll ask that question, okay?
It's frozen.
Okay, hold up.
He's frozen or dropped off.
No, he's back. Did you hear my question, Dr. Arjoon?
Yes, I did.
I mean, does the Central Statistics Office put out those numbers?
No, they don't. There is a document that put it out a few years ago, but in the most recent one, I haven't seen it. But respect to the CSO, they don't provide that particular information, unfortunately. The overall debt levels at TNT for the TNT economy remains somewhere in the vicinity of about $129 billion TT dollars. Now that is not just government debt. That is government debt together with the public debt in the public sector, mainly namely the state enterprises,
like WASA, TNTech, and so on.
Yeah. So part of our government debt. Now we don't necessarily count all of the state enterprise debt as part of our national debt. What we count is what is known as contingent liabilities. So that is where, let's say, a company's debt is about $10 billion, but the government says they will guarantee $5 billion out of that $10 billion if it cannot be repaid by the company. So that $5 billion form part of our national debt, because we have taken responsibility for it if it can't be repaid. So our contingent liabilities overall is in the vicinity of just over $30 billion TT dollars. So that of course has amplified our overall national debt quite a bit, as you would appreciate. But what our debt is, the debt that is owed to the United States, to China, to the European Union, etc. The CSO does not provide that data readily, but the data is there. It just needs to be sourced. Probably before if you all, or when you all, I should say, I hope you all do this another time for another program. I could always source that data for you all and provide it.
Yeah, of course, we're going to have you back, Dr. Arjoon. Here is another question, right? Is that why there are so many Chinese businesses now in TNT in the past decade? Because of the money that we owe China? The reason why we have...
No, I don't think that the monies that we owe China have anything to do with why there's such an incredible amount of Chinese investment in TNT. Remember, we are part of the Belt and Silk Road Initiative. And right. One of the agreements of the Belt and Silk Road Initiatives is that it allows investments, easier investments than to be made within both countries. So just as there are many Chinese businessmen in Trinidad and Tobago, there are many Chinese businessmen throughout South America and other countries that have signed on to this Belt and Road Agreement. It doesn't have to do with the fact that part of our national debt is to China.
So another question, what about Brazil's sugarcane industry for ethanol?
So that is, of course, a very valid question. The sugarcane industry for ethanol has picked up quite a bit in recent years, which is and that in itself is a lesson for us, given that we had a thriving sugarcane industry here in Trinidad and Tobago, but given that Carney Limited had closed down back in the early 2000s, that's yet another opportunity that we would have lost out on. But I think that equation, that commodity then that the Brazilian economy has been providing for some time now, again, is just one small factor in the drive towards renewables. Then I still maintain that we do need a healthy balance between the hydrocarbons and the renewable commodities.
Now, someone says Trinidad is owing money to the IMF and China for years that is impossible to pay back.
No, we're not owing any money to the IMF.
Dr. Arjoon, I'm glad you clarified that.
You understand?
There are some people who say that next 10 years we could be like Haiti. You know, and
no, you see, we have the politicians to some extent to blame for that. Sometimes when I'm hearing them in Parliament, all I can do is just shake my head because, for example, you would find certain politicians indicating that no, we can't go to the IMF because that'll put us under an IMF program. It's the big bad wolf from the 1980s, and that is going to significantly contract our economy, make many public servants lose their jobs, etc., etc. And first of all, the IMF is not the big bad wolf as it was back in the 1980s.
Correct is right.
The IMF, what they do now is, compared to what they would have done in the 1980s, they tailor-make programs. Like, let's say if the economy is in a desperate position and they cannot meet their debt obligations, so they have to go to the IMF for a bailout, and the IMF does give them a bailout. It is through the extended fund facility. Then they give you this money with certain conditions, but they tailor-make those conditions to the circumstances of the economy. Take Barbados, for example. And I like to refer to Barbados. I might be a bit biased because the economist that spearheaded the IMF program and is now their central bank governor was actually my very first mentor as an economist, Dr. Kevin Greenwich. What they had done, and the good thing is that Kevin Greenwich is Barbadian, so he understands the Barbadian economy. He worked in the central bank for many years, decades before, so he has a very good knowledge of the workings of the Barbadian economy, what they need and what they do not require. So one of the big driving forces in the recovery of the Barbadian economy was what you call capital expenditure on infrastructure, on roadworks, on buildings, etc. And that is the most direct form of investment and expenditure by the government that is going to promote the productivity in the country, that is going to help both directly and indirectly promote jobs, promote private sector activities, etc. So a large part, and this is very simple, it's not rocket science, a large part of their IMF program was spending on capital expenditure to actually create more jobs. Yes, there was some tightening involved, but it did not necessarily cause massive unemployment, as some of the politicians would have us or warn us about if we were to go on an IMF program. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not in one bit suggesting that we go on an IMF program. What I'm suggesting is that sometimes the way we talk about the IMF is not really warranted in this day and age. They're not the big bad wolf as they would have been several decades ago. And I think the Canadian experience and even the Jamaican experience recently would have shown this.
But Dr. Arjoon, a big thing that you may not have said is that when that happens with the IMF, right? Previously, the IMF used to come with a one-size-fits-all policy, and they're going to these different countries, right? And things have changed dramatically, as you just said. All right, so he's frozen. I hope he's hearing me. We're going to wait until he comes back. Yeah, so folks, if you just tune in to us, we're having a very
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Right, we're hearing you now. Right. So as I was saying
Yeah.
previously, when the IMF went into these different countries, they used to have a one-size-fits-all policy. And not only that, but IMF had a name that we really can't say on public radio, IMF, you know, if people know what I mean, right? They used to call them national, right? But I think when we listen to people, the main word that I think I didn't hear from you is that when the IMF give you these loans, many times there's a lot of corruption that happens, and all of that money doesn't go where it's supposed to go, right?
Well, so I don't think necessarily that comes when you have dealings with the IMF. I think when you have dealings with countries like the IMF and other multilaterals like the IDB, like the World Bank, etc., corruption can be mitigated to a large extent. I wouldn't go as far as to say corruption is eliminated, because you can never tell. But I think with those types of agencies, corruption is mitigated, because when you go on an IMF program, you have to account for every red cent, as they say. However, when you accept loans from other countries, like China, for example, the likelihood of there being some element of corruption is greater, is more or less greater. Especially when you find that you're taking loans and funding from them, and the level of transparency is not very high. You don't know the terms of these loans. Many times you're not even aware of what the interest is going to be unless the politicians comes out and they tell you. The odds of there being some sort of corruption happening is much higher. Whereas when you get loans from the IMF or the World Bank or the IDB, whatever multilateral organization that you're dealing with, the terms and conditions are made public. It is not hidden. So that is one factor that comes into play that could inhibit any opportunities for corruption. And then with respect to the IMF's monies, authorities have to account for how that money is spent. Now, emerging economies like TNT, like many other countries, all other countries in the Caribbean region, corruption is one of the biggest elephants in the room, and this is something that is an impediment into the region becoming titans, as Diana put it earlier. Regardless of where the monies come from initially, when you have monies that need to be spent on your budgetary obligations, be it spending and let's say I spoke about capital expenditure earlier, which is infrastructural spending. It is alleged that there's a significant degree of corruption in those spaces. Now, if you were to budget $5 billion per year to spend on capital expenditure, on infrastructural development, creating new road networks, transportation networks, refurbishing your port, etc., etc., those projects add a great deal and they create a great deal of economic activity. But because of the element of corruption, it takes a lot longer to complete the project, so the public loses out on the advantages that these projects could have provided, the economic advantages that these projects could have provided to the country when they are completed. It takes longer to enjoy them. Two, the longer it takes to be completed, the more money you have to pay to complete it, because contractors will come and say, well, our raw materials and construction equipment are more expensive now. And three, when the money is lost to corruption, you have to find it back somewhere to continue to actually meet your budgetary obligation. So that money disappears because of corruption. You have to find it back somehow or the other. And that is what contributes to driving up the debt burden. If you lose $1 billion to corruption, then you have to find an additional billion or even more from somewhere else to be able to finish the project that money was supposed to have been spent on. So countries like us, one of the first places you tend to go to for money when you've lost it is take out more loans. So that is another factor.
Frozen again.
We have with us tonight economist Dr. Arjoon, and we are talking about the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And we are asking some pertinent questions here regarding Trinidad and Tobago. So Doc, you just went out a little bit. So how much money, if you know, is owed to China? And someone will also want to know how much is still owed to Caroni farmers.
Owed to, sorry, the
Caroni farmers. How much is owed? How much is owed to China? Someone asked billions or millions. And how much is still owed to Caroni farmers?
As I indicated earlier, I don't have the figure for how much is owed to China. Okay. Of course, it's in the billions, but I'm not aware of what that figure is. I could, however, look for it, and I would happily pass it on to you all, so you can provide it to the listeners in a later program.
Sure, we have you back too, of course.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Like, and what about how much is still owed to Caroni farmers?
Yeah, that figure is actually, we're trying to figure it out itself, but that value has not been provided to the public as yet. Every year you hear it's a different amount. So, and now what they've started doing is levying a charge every year on a lease then that you have to pay every year. That each person that has received their agricultural lands, then they have to pay a particular amount. I think it's about $200, if not just a bit more. So that is another way that they're using these agricultural lands to try to make money, even though it's already been disseminated to the former Caroni workers. But there's still a substantial amount of persons that have not received their housing, because they're supposed to receive private housing lands as well and agricultural lands also. And there's still a substantial amount that have not yet received them. Another thing that's happening is that the Ministry of Agriculture have issued a warning in that if you are not using the agricultural land for farming purposes, or is just sitting there lying idly, which unfortunately is the case for several of them, they may be taking steps to actually seize it back from you.
But Doctor, are they seriously going to do that? I mean, they're contemplating, just like they're contemplating property tax for
taxes.
No, are they seriously do that? Do they have the testicular fortitude to do that?
That's a good question. I mean, you mentioned property tax. I think that the minister seems to be very headstrong in implementing this. I know that they're about to amend a particular legislation in Parliament that is dealing with evaluation of certain lands. So, for example, according to this legislation, if it's actually the valuation of land amendment bill. So what that is proposing to do, if my memory serves me correctly, is that if the rental value for your land or your property is worth $18,000 or less, they have the authority to actually value it at $18,000. So if it's about $16,000 worth in rental value, they have the authority to bump that up to $18,000, which means you end up paying more property tax than you really ought to be paying. And that's going to be brought to Parliament quite soon.
Dr. Arjoon, the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, is the incumbent, whoever they are at the time, obligated to make deposits toward that fund yearly? And is it exempt from being a pawn in a collateral a country wants to manhandle it in the event that we can't pay back a loan?
So there's legislation, there are laws that govern when you make deposits and when you don't have to make any deposits. So really and truly, if your energy revenues are above a certain threshold, so if you budget, if your energy revenues, your revenues from the energy sector exceed your budgeted energy revenues by a particular amount, that excess it is mandatory by law that excess goes into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. So really and truly, you have two parties in TNT. You have the People's National Movement, which is of course in government, and there's the United National Congress, which is in opposition. In the past, when the opposition were in government, that particular party made several deposits into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. So I can't see either of those two parties if no matter who forms the next government or whatever the case may be, I can't see anyone not putting monies into the HSF when it is due, because again, it is mandatory by law. That is in legislation. Once your energy revenues exceed your budgeted revenues by a certain amount, I think it's by over 10%, that excess over the 10% is supposed to go by law into the HSF. Let's say it exceeds by 9 or 8%, so that's obviously less than 10%. The Minister of Finance has the ability to decide for himself whether he wants to put that excess into the HSF or not. But once it's over 10%, that excess over the 10% has by law to go into the HSF fund.
So, Dr. Arjoon, I want to talk about the Dragon Field, but before that, somebody said, did you just pick 18,000 amount out of thin air?
That I'm not sure. I only just received the legislation amendment today, so I have to go through it. But what they would have been doing so far. Remember, when I say recently, over the last year, there was an exercise where they started to collect information from the public on properties being owned. You did not have officers going out into the enough officers then going out into the public to be able to assess people's properties, take pictures, etc. So what the Minister of Finance did is make it mandatory for you to submit your documents with pictures of your property, and submit that to the relevant agencies. So valuations division, they're supposed to now come up with the valuation of your property and the annual rental value then of your property, and they were supposed to do this by a particular date, creating the annual rental value for your property and then passing that on to the BIR, the Board of Inland Revenue, which is in charge of our taxation, and the BIR was supposed to send out, according to law, the valuation roll by March 31st to the entire public. If it's not out there by March 31st, that valuation roll that is supposed to tell you how much taxes you have to pay on your property based on your annual rental value, then you cannot implement that this year. So it's not likely. I would be very surprised if I see property tax being implemented from September onwards. I think, pragmatically speaking, from an economic standpoint, not a political standpoint, and we'll get to that in a bit, from an economic standpoint, you might see property tax being rolled out by 2024 at the very earliest. From a political standpoint, don't be surprised if they hold it back, even if they're ready to roll it out, because 2024 is quite close to 2025 when there's a general elections. Nobody wants to lose the elections at the end of the day.
Well, Dr. Arjoon, I can tell you that. I can go out on a limb, and this is a strong limb, I think. In 2024, I don't see them rolling out any property tax bill if they want to.
No more burdens on the population.
So Dr. Arjoon, what about the Dragon Field? Where are we with the Dragon Field? We have this big find of this Dragon Field, and we have Venezuela. We haven't seen any sort of. We haven't seen the Minister of Energy go and talk to President Maduro and shake hands regarding the Dragon Field. Where are we with the Dragon Field?
Well, initially, when it was announced that that activities that there is a 2-year moratorium then that was allowed to continue or to restart then the engagements with respect to this Dragon Field. The information that was provided to the public is that when it is actually monetized, it's only going to really provide about 350 million standard cubic feet per day of natural gas. Now that's not much in the grand scheme of things. Right now, we're producing about 2.7 billion SCF per day, and that is nowhere near enough to meet our local demand for natural gas. You need about safely just over 4 billion SCF per day for our local consumption needs. So part of that goes to TNTech to generate electricity with the independent power providers. Part of that goes to to the Atlantic LNG train. The 3 trains, we used to have 4, but now we have 3. The 3 trains, and another part of it, the remainder goes to the downstream industries in Point Lisas that require this natural gas for the petrochemical sector. Then, of course, we are nowhere near the production of 4 billion SCF per day. Now, it takes time, first of all, to monetize gas. Remember, they haven't begun any sort of extraction and production, nowhere near yet to extraction levels, the extraction stage then for this particular natural gas. So that is going to take several years. It takes about 3 years or 3 odd years, if you're lucky. I would probably put it at about 4 or 5 to be able to acquire this natural gas. The maximum we can get is about 350 million SCF per day. While that is an improvement to where we are right now, it's still not going to be adequate in terms of what we actually need for to effectively run the economy and bring us back to the levels where we were in the 2014, 2015 era. And the other thing is that, if you would recall, the stipulations as well is that we should not be, or the United States have indicated that you cannot engage in any sort of transaction with Venezuela that is going to enhance their financial position. So in other words, you can't pay them for it. In terms of, you can't give them a monetary compensation for it then. That was part of the stipulation provided by the US president. So if it's very unlikely that any leader, especially the president of Venezuela, is going to want payment for his gas in the form of, I don't know, food items or
fridge and stove. And
he is going to want money. So that begs a question: how are we going to compensate them for that? These are issues that have not been addressed just as yet. And anytime questions are posed to the state about what's happening with this particular initiative to acquire this dragon gas, it's usually just shut down. So the information there is really has not been brought out to the overall public just as yet. But I can tell you from the numbers standpoint, whatever we get from it is not going to be a substantial improvement, and that improvement is going to come in the post-2025 era at the earliest.
So just for knowledge, the Dragon field is a natural gas field located in Venezuelan territorial waters, approximately 120 kilometers or 75 miles off the coast of Trinidad and Tobago. The field is estimated to contain up to 4.2 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. That's what it states. Right. So Dr. Arjoon, we want to keep you for a little bit now. We're going to just go for a quick station identification. And when we come back, we have a question here: why it's so difficult to get US in Trinidad and Tobago? I see you open your eyes, Dr. Arjoon. We'll be right back. Stick and stay. Send the videos to the DAT Triplets and WZYE 95.9 FM. We'll be right
You're
back.
listening to WZYE 95.9 FM. You are listening to WZYE 95.9 FM, the most influential name in Caribbean radio in the tri-state area. Broadcasting from East Orange, New Jersey, the most influential name in Caribbean radio, WZYE 95.9 FM.
And Dr. Arjoon, I want to say this. We are back with you. It's in the village with the DAT Triplets and WZYE 95.9 FM. We come to you every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. Dr. Arjoon, this discussion that we are having here is such a splendiferous, marvelous, tremendous, splentastic, splentacular, that we definitely have to have you back. Because I think, Dr. Arjoon, that the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we are doing this to people in the diaspora and for those who are listening in Trinidad and Tobago as well. The people in Trinidad needs to understand these things, and the lay person needs to get a better understanding of these things, because sometimes when the information comes to them, some of them don't do no research. I mean, I'm not trying to, make any. They don't do much research, so they just take whatever the politicians tell them, and that's kind of sad, So here's the question: why is it so difficult to get U.S. in Trinidad and Tobago?
So this all goes back to the fact that our U.S. or foreign exchange earnings from our exports have not been as healthy as it used to, simply because the oil and gas production levels have waned substantially. As I would have indicated to you all, oil and gas production levels have substantially dropped since 2015. Now we do have healthy reserves compared to other countries. So I'm just trying to pull up the data here for you guys. In terms of our foreign exchange reserves, our net official reserves as at April this year is about $6.9 billion US dollars. And that is quite large compared to much of the other Caribbean region, much of the other countries in the Caribbean region, if not all of them. That basically gives us about, in terms of our import cover, about 8.7 months of imports. So we can use that close to $7 billion, that 6.9 billion, and be able to continue importing as we already are for the next 8.7 months or so, which is very healthy by regional and even international standards. However, our earnings are not as healthy as it used to be. I mean, we went from a position where it was in 2000 and I think it was 2015, if I'm not mistaken. In 2015, we would have had about 11 billion, the highest we've ever had, 11 billion US dollars in our foreign exchange reserves. Now, what you're finding is that there's a significant amount of inequity in how the funds are being distributed. So again, larger companies are in a safer position to acquiring this foreign exchange compared to smaller companies. That's one factor. Another factor is the fact that you have businesses that have established long-standing relationships with the banks. So because of these long-standing relations, they get a bit of a favoritism then from the commercial banks and also the authorized dealers. The other thing to consider, however, is that many entities and many companies, many businessmen, etc., instead of bringing back the US dollars to Trinidad and Tobago, they tend to keep it abroad in their foreign accounts. One way this is done is through trade misinvoicing. So if you have if let's say you export some items and you're supposed to be paid 100,000 US dollars for those items, but the invoice says 75,000 US, then really and truly, you're getting 75,000 US being paid. The authorities are seeing 75,000 on your invoice. They're seeing 75,000 going into your account. But the extra 25,000 is just left there in an international account, in an account somewhere in the United States or wherever the case may be. And trade misinvoicing is actually quite commonplace in Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, it generally accounts each year on average since 2008, about $3.5 billion US dollars are lost in trade misinvoicing alone in TNT. So $3.5 billion US dollars, that's close to 20 billion TT dollars. That's about half of your overall national budget. So it's quite extensive, that particular practice. People taking their monies and shipping it out through trade misinvoicing. Another practice that generally tends to happen is that there's a lot of hoarding of the US dollars, where as much US as you possibly can get, because it's so difficult in the commercial banks already, whatever US dollars they get, they just keep it to themselves, they keep it under their mattress, they keep it at home. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a foreign account. The other thing to keep in mind, however, is that a segment of US dollars have been allocated to manufacturers. And that has helped them quite a lot through the Exim Bank, the Export-Import Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. They initially received, I think it was 2 years ago, an allocation of 100 million US. That has since increased to the Exim Bank. So what that has done is significantly alleviate the problems for manufacturers in particular of accessing foreign exchange, not necessarily from the commercial banks, but in total. So that Exim Bank facility has, in all fairness, alleviated some of the distress and the difficulties in accessing US dollars. However, it has not done so for the remaining business community, especially the small businesses, and especially for the individual on the street. I mean, sometimes you go to the bank when you're traveling, all you can get is $200 US, and they tell you, well, you have a credit card, make sure you use it. That, in addition to not providing them adequate foreign exchange, is so that the bank could make money. Because if you use your credit card abroad, then there are bank charges that you have to pay as well.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Arjoon, I have one last question for you. They're flirting with the idea of BRICS, that dollar, to try to dethrone the US dollar. Do you see that coming into fruition, BRICS? And if it does,
I would be very, very shocked, and I probably would change my name to Mervyn or something if that were to happen, at least in the next 40 to 50 years. I cannot see that happening. The main reason being is that, you see, that is to try to circumvent the need for the US dollar for international trade. But if you look at the transactions that these countries, the value of international trade that they account for, it is still not very high. So one has to consider that there's the BRICS, and then there's the rest of the world. And the rest of the world still utilize predominantly the US dollar for their international trade. Secondly, most countries out there, if not all of them, inclusive of the BRICS, they hold financial assets. They hold assets that are denominated in US dollars. They hold large amounts of government treasuries, US dollar treasuries. They invest heavily in the stock market. Take, for example, our own Heritage and Stabilization Fund. A lot of that is invested in the stock market. Over 60% of it is invested in the treasuries, in US treasuries. So if you were to if they try to destabilize the US dollar, then many economies, including those economies, are going to face a serious financial hit as well, because they own a large amount of assets that are denominated and backed by the US dollar. Thirdly, any one of them, let's say China or India, want to become the dominant country, as in terms of their currency becoming now the dominant, offering the dominant currency then for international trade, then what's going to happen is that to facilitate this, they have to issue a large amount of debt. And their debt levels are already quite high. So and that could destabilize their economy. So I can't imagine why they would want to do that, especially at this stage. So I do think that, yes, they are trying a different way in going about in terms of the payment settlements, rather than needing the US dollar. If they will, some countries might want to accept the Chinese renminbi or the Brazilian real or whatever the case may be. But I cannot see that destabilizing the US dollar anytime soon. A large amount of these countries all across the world, still use the US dollar for international trade. The US dollar is backed by good faith as well, and we cannot discount how important that good faith is. Plus, there's the fact that they have assets that are backed, that are denominated in the US dollar.
Okay. All right. Any questions, Tommy? Anybody else? Hello? I think they may have gone on. Are you hearing me, Dr. Arjoon?
All's well.
All right.
All's well.
Yeah, Dr. Arjoon, we want to thank you so much for giving us such a fantabulous education tonight in the village. And we definitely like to have you back, because I didn't even go through half of my questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, these topics are so interesting, and we can all learn so much, from these type of, discussions. So any closing words before you go? By the way, your good friend, Dr. Mohammed, is like, he's always in here, Dr. Shane Mohammed. You can make you and him as good partners. Right?
Yeah, he's a good friend.
Yeah.
He's a good resource as well.
Yeah, he's like a friend of the village, you know. He's always in here. You know what I mean? We have him in here quite often, and he has become, you know, the expertise here when we want to come, when we go to our political scientists.
But Dr. Arjun, he likes some bacchanal too, eh?
And any political scientist must like bacchanal for them to want to study politics.
Yeah, but you don't seem like you like no bacchanal, and you straight.
He's reserved. He's a numbers person. He's reserved.
Any economist with his socks needs to focus on the data and the numbers and the story that is telling.
Correct.
Because like you rightly said, there's a lot of propaganda out there. There's a lot of misinformation, and this is why economists and financial practitioners are important. It is important for them to speak out, because you know we have access, not all the data at the tip of our fingers, but we can get it and interpret it properly to dispel a lot of this misinformation that the very politicians are unfortunately from time to time responsible for.
So Dr. Arjun, we want to
also highlight the importance of trying to be informed for yourselves, of trying to the internet is a huge resource that we have. The data is there, the information is there. It's just a mind. It's just a you know, to make it a point to spare some time and go and source the information on your own.
And libraries are there. We want to encourage people to read books.
Yeah.
So Dr. Arjun, again, we want to say thank you so very much, you know, for joining us tonight. We're definitely going to have you back, and thanks again.
Thank you, Dr. Arjoon. Very informative.
Thank you very much once more for having me.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Have a good night. Bye.
Good night.
Oh boy, we went to school there tonight. Boy, look. You see all this there? Notes, you know. I could give you a paper, you know. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is what these are the type of discussions people need to have on you know, we ain't talk nothing about PNM or UNC tonight, right?
Yeah, by the way, you mentioned opposition. Other than that, that was the HSF fund.
Yeah,
but we talk, you know, informative information, credible information. Credible.
Yeah.
That is really true to power when you talk about the information and the misinformation that is being fed to the public.
But you want to clarify that the Ministry of Finance is giving the IMF the numbers.
Yeah, see?
To give the numbers to the media in Trinidad and Tobago, or the media. You understand?
Your PNM political scientist people will say that.
Well, I mean, any political parties,
political analysts. That's who they anoint themselves.
No, well, those who are in opposition will say that, right? But anyway, my closing comment for the night is, let me get my closing comment. I think this was really, really, really inspiring, and a lot of clarification on information. That my closing comment is: strong women never give up. We might need a coffee, a cry, or even a day in bed, but we always come back stronger. From where I sit, this is it. Clock on the wall, so that's all I like to say, but I've got to go. Remember, hard work beats talent when talent does not work hard. And for every 60 seconds of anger, they lose 1 minute of happiness. See you. Same WZYE time, same WZYE channel. Go ahead, Tony.
My closing comments are, first, MLK. He says, the time is always right to do what's right. And the next one is by Babe Ruth. He says, never let the fear of striking out get in your way. Like I always say, never look down on a person unless you're looking to give them a hand to pick them up. Again, love is the key. Love you all. Pleasant night. See you at the next edition of In the Village with the DAT Triplets. Good night.
Well done.
And staying in the realm of finance, financial freedom is less about financials and more about freedom. Rich people have their money work hard for them. Poor people work hard for their money. Rich people act in spite of fear. Poor people let fear stop them. Rich people constantly learn and grow. Poor people think they already know. This is your poet and your radio host saying Auf Wiedersehen till we meet again. Good night, people.
Good night.
I see here Rennie is asking for a song, Hans Lemmer. All right.
Yeah, I see it. What's the name of the song?
Oh gosh.
Winston.
I don't mind if you want to give me, I won't refuse it.
And he said I should Diana. You read that part. You leave, you leave out that part. Diana conveniently leave out the last part of the sentence.
There's a calypso called Paranoid. Mister, like you're paranoid. Don't get me annoyed.
And I read the whole thing, man. Come on, man. Read the whole thing. Don't read part.
The wife gonna throw him out the house. That's what she's gonna do. But anyway.
You're impartial.
What?
Read the whole thing, man.
What he said, play that one, send it to Diana, and I tell him to be paranoid, Mister, like you're paranoid. Don't get me annoyed.
So here is Mean Jean. Mean Jean says, this was the best interview on WZYE. This is what I prefer instead of the negative politics. Yeah. Rennie says, Diana, all fun and jokes aside, I love and respect you fully. Yeah.
I know, Rennie, I know.
Yeah, I Rennie always respect you. Denise says, I'm inspired by the discussion tonight. There's so much to learn about TT in order to have a meaningful impact. Kudos to guests on elevating the dialogue and raising awareness all around. And that is what we have to do, seriously.
Yeah.
We're serious about that. We're serious about that. When he say Wall's birthday request, I don't mind Winston, so send that one to Diana. Send that one for Diana. Yeah, Diana?
Capiza selling US 10 to 1. I selling it 8 to 1. Let's see who gonna win out.
Yeah, all right. All go ahead and send. When he says live, love, laugh, ingredients for long life. Everybody's happy birthday to Rennie again, eh?
Yes. And want to thank Dr. Arjoon for taking the time out to come in and educate us.
Yeah.
He didn't educate, he educate us. Thank you, Dr. Shane, for making the contact.
Yeah.
Dr. Mohammed.
We suffered inflation. What are you talking about? Investors are not investing in the American economy because of inflation. So, Heidi, you want to tell an economist, right? What are you talking about? Heidi, you're good enough, boy. 10% Heidi. Heidi, 10%.
Like you said, propaganda.
Yeah.
I mean, but here, I know, I know a young man who just graduated from UE, I think in engineering, civil engineering, or electrical, mechanical, one of the engineering fields. And he got a job, and he's gone to Guyana, and he's working on, they're building 3 hospitals. So he's involved in that. You see?
Opportunity.
They're going to Guyana to build 3 hospitals. Oh, all right. I don't know what's going on with Trinidad. Anyway.
Remember, Guyana has a sudden burst of wealth that they have experienced due to their energy business.
Hey, is this Winston Sosa song copyrighted?
Yeah, let me check it for you.
Yeah, check that. That 1.8 billion views, boy. That song like that. I'm gonna be copyrighted. Boy.
Oh, you could find him singing it live. You can't find him singing it live?
Yeah, I had to take a look. Diana, Nadia says Dr. Mohammed Rennie. Dr. Mohammed Rennie. Happy birthday, wishing you more birthday. Ali says, answer my trade so I know what inflation does to the currency. Obviously, you do not know about it. So your question where you do not know. All right, Eileen.
It's saying Audium, ASCAP, and Music Rights Society.
That's copyright. That's copyright.
All right, let me see if we can find it live. Yeah, he's singing it live if you scroll down.
Which one is
on
it?
the GBTV?
GBTV culture.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's singing it live.
Okay.
So when he's singing it live, it's okay, right?
No, let me see. All right, it doesn't have nothing there. All right. Put it
Yeah.
up. Yeah, hopefully that's okay. So this for Rennie birthday, folks. Happy. How old he is?
48.
He shows like 84.
48. Am I old man?
Diana, that's not the age you like?
Am I senior citizen?
Diana.
Am I senior citizen, man?
All right. Here we go. So this is for Rennie, folks. Happy birthday, Rennie.
For Diana.
Oh, for Diana. My bad.
Yes.
Hit me hard. Hit the play. Turn the music. In the heat of the jam, she wants to go home. She said, oh, the family gone. We go be alone. Just as we reach, she took off she costume and put on she robe. Have something to eat, darling. Have some of this food. All we need is joy. She don't mind. Darling, I don't mind if you want to give me a woman. Turn the music. Oh, I don't mind. Darling, I don't mind if you want to give me a woman. Yeah. Let it go. Oh, honey, take all you want. Don't worry about me. I'm sitting here having some fun, darling. What do you mean? You looking so tired. I want you to take a rest. Have some fun you done. Woo, Lord. I said, girl, be quiet. Not the way she is. I'm a greedy man. Oh, I don't mind. Darling, I don't mind if you want to give me a woman. I don't mind. I don't mind if you want to give me a moon with you, baby. Oh, granny, oh, hey, hey, hey. Pretty girl, I'm there. Yeah. Oh, damn it, yeah, take me to the jam, take me on the streets. I'm sure you're hearing the band, darling, till you want to eat. You could come back later, you will feel much better when you jump around. Oh, baby, this time, you go give me greater, we gonna have more fun. Oh, and I don't mind. I don't mind if you want to give me a one with music. Oh, I don't mind. Sing the song. I don't mind. Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. Can you do it? Big Lord. And the rain I go. And the rain I go. Good Lord. Let anything. Yeah. Oh, in the heat of the jam, she wants to go home. She said, oh, my family come, darling, we could be alone. But just that we reached, she took off she costume and put on she robe. Have something to eat, darling, have some of this food underneath the door. Oh, and she don't mind, look at darling. I don't mind. Oh, yeah. Oh, sing the song. I don't mind. I don't mind. Oh, it's kicking me. Darling, come and give me. Darling, come and give me. Give me anything now. I don't mind. Give me anything now. Darling, give me anything now. I don't want to give me anything now. I don't mind. Give me anything now. I don't mind. Give me anything now. Lord, give me anything now. Yo, give me anything now. I don't mind. Give me anything now. I don't mind. Give me anything now. Eating up, good Lord. I'm a greedy man. I don't mind. But that is not enough. Darling, don't you understand? Yeah. Hey, hey, hey. Oh, Lord, I want you to come now, darling. I don't mind. I'm not leaving all that's to me. Oh, that's up all this one I want. I'm excited. One thing. How about a round of applause for the lady? And I did it all. Yeah, thank you. Oh, baby. I want to give it to me, 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 baby. Just want to give it to me, baby. I 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 want to give it to me, baby. Come and give it to me, baby. I want to give it to me, baby. I want to give it to me, baby. I want to give you. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the show. Oh, I don't mind. I want to give you, baby. 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 I don't mind. I don't mind if you want to give me. I won't refuse it. You hear that? I don't mind you. All right. Somebody will be passing around with records of Winston.